Sitting at my desk, I reminisced about the 30 years since our wedding, recalling our honeymoon and the fondest memories of my life. Reflecting on our cherished time in Hawaii with Maggie fills me with deep nostalgia and gratitude. It was an extraordinary, magical experience that will always hold a special place in my heart. From the start, it felt like we had stepped into an enchanted realm, washing away all worldly concerns and leaving a serene tranquility. Walking hand in hand along Waikiki's pristine beaches with gentle waves kissing our feet, we were captivated by the beauty around us. The fragrant scent of plumeria lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the romance and peace that surrounded us. Our honeymoon wasn't just about the breathtaking landscapes, it was the shared experiences that etched themselves into our souls. Exploring lush rainforests and discovering hidden waterfalls revealed the majesty of nature. Standing together, we marveled at the raw power and beauty around us. Our clifftop villa in Maui offered endless panoramic views. Every sunset was a masterpiece, painting the sky in vibrant hues. In those precious moments as we held each other close, our hearts overflowed with love and devotion. The nights were filled with romance, starting with candlelit dinners on the beach under a canopy of stars, savoring fresh seafood and island delicacies. But it was Maggie's tender gaze that truly made those evenings magical. Hawaii wasn't just a destination. It became the embodiment of our love story, filled with cherished memories and shared dreams. Thinking back on our honeymoon, I relived the beauty and depth of our connection. Hawaii fueled our love, strengthening our bond and bringing us unparalleled joy and peace. I'm sincerely grateful for the precious memories we created in that romantic oasis. Lost in thought, my secretary interrupted, noticing my good mood. She jokingly asked if I'd won the lottery. I explained that my wife had been especially attentive lately, making me feel appreciated and loved after years. It felt like a second honeymoon, and for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to be with her and couldn't stop thinking about her. For the past 2 weeks, I've called Maggie several times a day just to hear her voice, feeling like a lovesick teenager. But I didn't mind. I was happy again, and I didn't want it to end. Maggie and I share a sturdy marriage, yet over 30 years, the spark can dwindle into routine. However, these past 2 weeks have been different. Maggie's been playful, eager for closeness almost every night, and reviving past gestures. I never doubted this surge in affection as anything but a rejuvenation of our bond. Excitedly, I left work early, planning a romantic surprise for her. I bought 24 roses, penned a heartfelt note, picked up her favorite wine and a box of chocolate-covered cherries. Tonight, along with professing my love, I'll unveil the 7-night cruise I booked in celebration of our love. With a grin, I returned home through the garage, brimming with anticipation. Climbing the kitchen steps, instead of finding my beloved wife Maggie, I discovered our daughter Brandy, 29, at the table. Greeting her with a kiss on the forehead, I asked, "Hey there, where's Mom?" Just 2 weeks ago, they had a significant conversation.
"Brandy, I'm not sure about this," Maggie confessed. "I love your dad very much, and I'm afraid that if I go through this, I'll hurt him." "Mom, Dad loves you and he will understand," Brandy reassured. "You yourself said that you need something more than what you received before, and Dad is not getting any younger. I know that he will understand your needs and allow you to have this one-time pleasure." "Brandy, there's no way I can stand in front of your father and tell him I'm on a date with another man. I just can't do it," Maggie insisted. "Then let me do it," Brandy offered. "Alexander will be waiting for you at the restaurant at 7 in the evening, and you will be ready to leave by 6 in the evening when Dad gets home. I'll be here and explain everything to him, and you'll get the experience you crave." "Honey." "Yes, I agreed to this date, but I have doubts. This is wrong and I shouldn't go. How will I be able to look your father in the eye for the next 2 weeks knowing that I agreed to go on a date with another man?" Maggie expressed her concerns. "Well, I can suggest that you don't tell him anything, but during these 2 weeks, show him how much you love him. Let him know that he has nothing to worry about. And when I explain everything, he will understand that what you are doing is not about love, but only about new friendships and a little fun lovemaking. Reach out to him and rock his world. And when I explain the situation that evening, he will welcome you back with open arms. Believe me, Dad loves you and is ready to do anything for you. He always gave you what you wanted, just like that," Brandy advised. "Showing his love for you, Mom. Probably yes. And maybe you're right. Well, I mean, it's just one date and it doesn't mean I'm leaving your father for another man. Having a fun night out 30 years later shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to show your dad how wonderful he is and how much I love him every night until date night. And then, when I get back to him, I'm going to try to make him the happiest man in the world," Maggie resolved. "Mom, just make him feel loved and appreciated. He is a great guy and will give you this one-of-a-kind experience. Now I have to get home to cook dinner for Mike." "Thanks, baby, and say hi to Mike. When will you two give us grandchildren?" Brandy asked. "Soon. We've already talked and plan to start working on it in a few months," Brandy replied. Before heading home, Maggie sat alone in the art studio Jason had built for her behind their house, in front of his latest project. Lately, she had been having difficulty being creative because the thought of being with another man weighed heavily on her. Guilt blocked her creativity until Maggie remembered Brandy's words, and suddenly her brushes came to life, covering the canvas with vibrant colors and emotional landscapes. Suddenly, she felt confident that she was doing the right thing for herself and that her husband would give her this experience. She found herself talking to herself as she sat alone, feeling peace overcome her guilt. "Jason may be angry at first, but I know I can make him understand. I truly love this man, and he was such a wonderful husband and father. I will be the best wife and show him how much I love him." On the initial night of my love-boosting plan, I slipped into his favorite baby doll nightgown post-shower, fixed my hair, and spent time on my makeup. Meeting Jason at the door in the nightgown and heels, I whisked him to the bedroom, undressing him and surprising him with a long-forgotten pleasure below the belt, eagerly. His smile filled me with warmth, and I pondered why I hadn't done this sooner. His embrace and words of love sealed the moment. "Maggie, that was the best homecoming in ages. What prompted it?" Jason inquired. "I just wanted to show you how special you are and how much I love you." "Did you enjoy it?" I asked. "I did. It's been too long. I forgot how much I missed it. I felt content," he replied, pulling me onto the bed for passionate kisses. It was the best closeness we'd had in years, leading me to reconsider my date plans with Alexander. Over the ensuing weeks, our closeness soared, and Jason transformed. He was more joyful, affectionate, and engaging, reigniting our bond. I found myself happier than I'd been in ages and reconsidered my date night plans, even confiding in Brandy about the change. Maybe I didn't need that experience anymore as Dad and I found our spark again. "This is wonderful, Mom, but hold off on canceling just yet. Let's see how the next 2 weeks unfold. Enjoy each other and reevaluate later. You can always cancel last minute and Alexander will understand. But remember, this opportunity might not come again," Brandy advised. "Okay, maybe you're right. Tell me more about Alexander. I recall he's your friend's father, but refresh my memory about his situation," I requested. "Sure, Mom. When his wife Mary was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor, Alexander dedicated himself to her until her passing. He became a recluse afterward, battling depression and loneliness. He struggled with the idea of dating again, feeling lost without Mary," Brandy explained. "As I listened to his story, I realized I might have a solution for both of you," Brandy continued. "I told him about your enduring love for Dad and your desire to rejuvenate your relationship. We discussed the idea of a date not for a long-term romance, but to explore friendship and perhaps more. I promise, once I show Mom your picture and tell her about you, she won't pass up this opportunity. But she's a bit older than you. Will that be an issue?" "Not at all. As long as she looks the same. I'd love to spend time with her." "What about your dad? Will he be okay with her dating me? After all, she's his wife." "Like I said, leave it to me. Dad will do anything to make Mom happy, and she needs it just as much as you do. I think you two can support each other and become good friends. Trust me, I'll handle everything. I'll talk to her, and if she's on board, I'll give you her number. Then you can plan a date and spend the night together." "Night? What do you mean?" "Mr. Connor, you're both adults. You both crave companionship. Get creative and plan an evening and night together. So he finds you attractive and wants to spend the night with you. If you're interested, I'll give him your cell number and tell him to call you during the day. He seems really nice, and he's about 10 years younger than you. I know you'll be happy. He just needs someone to talk to and be friends with. And I believe you two can help each other." The following day, Alexander phoned Maggie, and after a delightful chat, he asked her to be his companion and spend the night with him. His compliments about her photo and the prospect of a date made her feel giddy like a schoolgirl. The thrill of something new and his playful banter gave her butterflies. She accepted the date eagerly, expressing her anticipation. While he offered to pick her up, she preferred to meet at the restaurant. They exchanged texts daily, their flirtation escalating as their date night drew near. On the eve of their rendezvous, Maggie's texts would have failed any fidelity test. She was consumed with excitement, envisioning the evening ahead. Despite her thoughts of Jason, she poured more energy into their lovemaking every night.
Jason sported a perpetual grin, while Maggie harbored an insatiable craving for closeness, reaching a level of fulfillment exceeding her wildest dreams. I cherished my daughter, viewing her as the epitome of beauty. Proud of her evolution into the woman she is today, I lamented not spending more time with her during her formative years. Nevertheless, I toiled to provide them with a good life and endeavored to be there for her as much as possible. Upon spotting her, I greeted her with a smile tinged with embarrassment. "Darling, what brings you here? And where's your mother?" I inquired, placing 24 roses, a bottle of wine, and a box of chocolates on the table. "I have a special surprise for your mom tonight, and I can't wait to see her reaction." Reaching into my jacket pocket, I retrieved travel plans and tickets for a week-long cruise. "I'm whisking your mom away on a 7-day cruise aboard the new yacht, love. I'm eager to witness her joy when she learns about it. Don't breathe a word when she arrives. I want it to be a surprise." "Dad." Her use of daddy always tugged at my heartstrings, evoking memories of her as a little girl nestled on my lap. But I sensed something amiss as tears welled in her eyes, and she struggled to catch her breath, clearly anxious about what I was about to hear. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, a tear slipping from her eye. Witnessing the concern on my face, I inquired, "What's wrong? Is something the matter with Mom?" "No, Mom's okay. Please, just sit down and I'll explain everything," she urged. I settled in, meeting her tearful gaze as she struggled to continue. After a pause, she began, "Dad, you know how much Mom loves you, and she's mentioned how great things have been between you two lately." "Yes, and I love her too. That's why I want to express my feelings for her now." Seeing her tears, I sensed that her words weren't unfolding as planned. "I'm really sorry, Daddy, but Mom has a date." I sat in silence, comprehending the words, but grappling with their significance. Her tears flowed as my mind connected the dots, stirring anger within me. "Brandy, what do you mean?" "Where's your mother?" I demanded, my voice booming, causing her to recoil in fear. "Mom loves you deeply, Daddy. And you might take this the wrong way, but she went on a date with someone else and won't be home until tomorrow. She couldn't bring herself to tell you, so I volunteered because she didn't want to hurt you. It's just one night, and she'll be back tomorrow." "What's this, a joke? You can't be serious." "Your mother would never betray me like this. We were so loving and close." "I can't believe it," I exclaimed. "Dad, she loves you. She just needed to try something new. After 30 years of marriage, she felt restless and wanted more in life, just once. Nothing will change between you except that she'll love you even more for understanding," my daughter reasoned. Studying her closely, I asked, "Brandy, why are you involved in this? Your mother shouldn't have brought you into it, and I should be discussing this with her, not you. How did she rope you into this?" "Dad, you know Mom and I have always been close. We share everything. She confided that things had slowed down between you two in the bedroom and she felt neglected. My friend's father lost his wife years ago. He was depressed and needed companionship, so I introduced them," she explained. I abruptly stood, knocking over a chair. "What, are you serious? You set your mother up on a date with your friend's father?" I demanded, pacing the kitchen in disbelief. "Damn it, Brandy! Answer me!" I yelled, towering over her. "Did you arrange this? My wife, your mother, is on a date with your friend's father because of you?" Anger surged through me, spittle flying from my mouth. "I'm really sorry, Daddy, but yes, it sounds bad when you put it that way, but I did it out of love for my friend's parents," she explained. "Holy hell, what have you done? Love for your friend's parents? What about your love for me? Am I just some piece of trash you can disrespect and expect me to accept whatever you come up with? Where is she now? And what did you mean when you said she won't be home until tomorrow?" I demanded. "Dad, he took her to a restaurant. I don't know which one, and then they'll spend the night together, but it's only this once. She'll be back tomorrow. And Daddy, she loves only you." All she's been telling me for the past 2 weeks is how much she loves you and doesn't want you to be hurt. It's just one date and one night. She knew you would understand and give her this one chance. Is that all? So foolishly, I've believed her recent affection was fueled by love. But now you're telling me it was just to assuage her guilt. Well, this won't end well, I assure you, I retorted, still in disbelief. Tears streaming down her face, she pleaded, Dad, it's not like that at all. She never pretended or hurt you. On the contrary, she did everything possible to show you her love. Daddy, can't you just give her this one night? You know she loves you and can't imagine life without you. She told me she looks forward to your retirement and spending time with your grandchildren. Mike and I plan to have kids, and we need both of you. Well, isn't that incredibly unusual? That ship sailed the moment she agreed to go on a date with someone other than me. Who is this guy? I asked. He's my friend Mary's dad. He's really nice, and I think you'll like him. Daddy, I believe you two have a lot in common, she replied. Oh, really? We could be great pals. So you think I could befriend a man who knowingly dates a married woman? My wife. Maybe we can become drinking buddies, and I can offer him your mom on the weekends. Is that what you and your mom have in mind for me? I retorted sarcastically. Brandy sank into her chair, realizing a serious flaw in her plan. She had never seen me so angry, or heard me speak to her like that. A shiver ran down her spine as she recoiled from my anger. After pacing around the room, I finally regained control of my emotions and turned to my daughter. Speaking with a venomous tone she didn't want to hear anymore. My hurt and pain were evident, making her feel small and guilty for her role in the situation. Listen carefully, Brandy. I want you to leave now. I need to be alone to process what you two did to me tonight. I don't want to see or hear from you. Don't call me. Don't write. Ever. Your betrayal is unforgivable. And now I have no daughter. You are dead to me. Do you understand what this means? I'm no longer your father, and I don't have a daughter. Now get out of my house and never speak to me again, I declared sternly. Brandy sobbed openly, her head in her hands. Dad, please don't say that. I love you, and I want to stay here tonight. Mom and I planned for me to stay with you. We don't want you to be alone. The level of disrespect you've shown me makes me question if you ever respected or loved me as your father. You're your mother's daughter. All these years, I worked tirelessly to provide you and your mother with a better life, and this is the gratitude I get. No. It turns out I'm only here as a meal ticket, and I've obviously never earned any respect from either of you, I concluded bitterly. Between tears and sobs, she uttered, Dad, I love you. Please, refrain from saying that. Leave it to your mom to explain everything tomorrow. You've had 30 wonderful years together, and I know you love her. Give her just one thing, and she won't leave you. Daddy, she loves you. She may have her one thing, 2 things, or 1,000 things, but she will never have me again. Forgiveness is beyond my capabilities. Everyone involved will be punished, including the lonely man who took my wife. A married woman. Now go away. You showed your true colors. You still have your mother. Nothing will change for you. You two are made for each other. Like I said, Brandy, in my heart, you are no longer my daughter. Now please leave me. With tears streaming down her face in agony, she literally ran out of the house, experiencing a pain she had never felt before. She never anticipated her father's reaction would be like this. Had he truly forsaken her? For the first time, she realized she might have overstepped a boundary by aiding her mom with this idea. Knowing he loved them both, she could see his anger clearly. No, he was furious, and she prayed he would forgive them. Immediately after Brandy departed, I dialed Maggie's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left several messages pleading for her to call me and come home. After a few drinks and no response, I sent numerous text messages with the same plea. Still, there was no reply. By 2 o'clock in the morning, it dawned on me that she wouldn't return or answer my calls. Exhausted from self-pity, I simply stared at the TV, which was broadcasting more bad news. In an instant, my world transformed into a nightmare. I reflected on our 3 decades of marriage, recalling the fond memories, the birth of our daughter, the joyous celebrations, Brandy's wedding, and the close bond we shared. All now seemed lost forever. Before her infidelity, Maggie and I maintained closeness 2 to 3 times a week, albeit routine and less thrilling than in our youth. Yet there were no grievances. Post-coitus, we always embraced and drifted off to sleep in each other's arms. I love you was a daily exchange, and disagreements were rare. Gazing out the window, my eyes settled on the art studio I constructed for Maggie to nurture her passion. For 2 decades, She devoted herself to crafting remarkable paintings and sculptures, earning accolades displayed in the studio-turned-gallery I crafted to showcase her achievements. It became her sanctuary, a testament to her artistic prowess. While I adored her, I often felt relegated to a distant third in her priorities, behind our daughter and her art. Regardless, her happiness was paramount to me. Brandy's revelation rattled me to the core. The disclosure of her desire to seek closeness elsewhere blindsided me, a betrayal delivered through our daughter that stoked my fury and humiliation. Amidst my turmoil, I contemplated my life, my home, and the uncertain future ahead. My ancestral home, passed down from my grandfather, stood free of mortgage and stirred thoughts of vengeance in my inebriated mind. Fueled by anger and hurt, I pondered ways to inflict reciprocal pain upon Maggie. As I continued to peer out at her sanctuary, a surge of resolve coursed through me. With newfound vigor, I leapt from the couch, replacing sorrow with action. Over a dozen trips to our bedroom ensued, as I gathered Maggie's belongings and relocated them to her studio. Expensive shoes, dresses, clothes, jewelry, all now strewn across the floor of her artistic refuge. For the next hour, I scoured the house for photo albums, including our wedding mementos, stacking them atop the burgeoning pile. Then it struck me. She had vacuum-sealed belongings in the attic. Among them lay her wedding gown, infant garments, and numerous sentimental items, all of which I hauled down into the growing heap, now towering over 1 meter high. It's astonishing how much one person accumulates over the years. Removing all her framed photographs from the walls, I added them to the stack. Sculptures, sketches, and every cherished possession she held dear were amalgamated into this mounting pile of belongings. As the clock struck 5 in the morning, I remained on edge. Resolving to refrain from action until 6 a.m., I afforded her an opportunity to return home or respond to my calls and messages. Should I receive no reply or find her absent, I vowed to complete what I had started. Rechecking the house, I ensured every item of hers was now housed in the studio. At 5:30, I retrieved a 20-liter canister of gasoline from the garage and made my way to the studio. Preparing for 6 a.m. in the interim, I conducted online transactions, canceling joint credit cards, transferring funds to separate accounts, withdrawing cash from the safe, and packing a few suitcases. These I loaded into my truck, anticipating my temporary departure until legal matters were resolved. Waiting another 5 minutes for her potential return, by 6:05, my last glimmer of hope extinguished. I doused the pile and studio walls with gasoline. With a heavy sigh and brief hesitation, I made my fateful decision, igniting the heap with a lit match. The flames rapidly consumed her treasures, their glow already visible from the street before I could depart. The flames swiftly engulfed her world and everything dear to her. Driving down the highway, a sudden realization hit me, accentuated by my dire state. A profound sorrow washed over me, tears streaming down my face. In that moment, it dawned on me that my once blissful marriage had met the same fate as the studio. It had burned to the ground. What caught me off guard was the fires spread from the studio to the back porch, igniting both structures. Fortunately, firefighters managed to douse the blaze in the studio and contain the flames on the porch, salvaging the house. However, the residence suffered extensive smoke damage and was rendered uninhabitable until repairs were completed. Amidst the chaos, I checked into a highway motel roughly 90 miles away from the smoldering remains of my marriage, paying with cash. I was determined not to be found until I could gather my thoughts, opting for cash to avoid leaving a trail if the authorities pursued me. Fueled by adrenaline, I remained wide awake until I entered my room. Switching off my phone, I collapsed onto the bed, slipping into a deep slumber and only awakening at noon. As soon as I powered on my phone, it lit up with notifications. I found dozens of missed calls and texts from Brandy, Maggie, and the sheriff.
Upon exiting the Uber, I rendezvoused with Alexander at the restaurant, a mix of nervousness and excitement coursing through me as I beheld the sight of this attractive young man awaiting me at the reception desk. A smile graced his lips as he noticed my admiration of my little black dress, complemented by black sheer tights and matching high heels. His gaze lingered on my revealed cleavage, accentuated by the black bra peeking through. Earlier in the day, I had spent hours at the salon ensuring my hair and makeup were flawless, determined to make this one-time encounter thrilling, unforgettable, and flawless for him. My companion seemed pleased with the sight before him, his growing manhood subtly adjusting to his reaction. Bolstered by his apparent approval, my confidence soared as I greeted him with a tender kiss. As we exchanged greetings, we migrated to the bar, settling onto bar stools, where I caught him stealing glances at my nylon-clad legs down to my underwear as I rose. Our mutual smiles persisted as he placed our drink order. Deciding to silence my phone to avoid any distractions, I resolved to savor every moment of this unique evening, recognizing its fleeting nature. There was a palpable chemistry between us, and our rapport felt akin to that of old friends. I found myself lightly touching his arm and engaging in flirtatious banter, behaviors I rarely indulged in, even with Jason. But tonight, I was determined to embrace my inner confidence and relish in the experience. As we polished off our second glass, the gracious hostess announced our table was ready and ushered us to our seats. Dinner was delightful, and I relished our conversation and shared time. When he inquired if I still desired to spend the night with him, I slipped off my heels and teasingly slid my foot between his legs. His gaze lingered on my red toenails, peeking through the sheer nylon, eliciting a smile as he declared it was time to depart. Hand in hand, he guided me to his prearranged hotel room. As the elevator ascended to the 14th floor, the gravity of the situation struck me, and fleeting thoughts of Jason flooded my mind. Sensing my apprehension, he drew me close to his sturdy frame. Meeting his gaze, I was met with a passionate kiss unlike any I had experienced before. That moment was all it took to cast aside thoughts of my husband and marriage. Tonight, I was his, fully embracing the experience. Once inside the room, he wasted no time in unzipping my dress, allowing it to cascade to the floor before disrobing himself. Spinning me around, he praised my allure, then deftly removed my bra and guided me to the bed. The passage of time became a blur as the encounter unfolded, each moment suffused with sensuality and tenderness, leaving me yearning for more. Falling to my knees, I lavished attention on his exquisite form. After several moments, unable to resist any longer, he fervently removed my pantyhose and insisted I don my heels again, confessing their allure heightened his desire. Amidst our lovemaking, he peppered me with passionate kisses, displaying an expertise that left me awestruck. Fleetingly, I entertained thoughts of introducing similar passion to Jason, but quickly pushed such comparisons aside. His unwavering gaze met mine as he uttered the unexpected words, "I love you, Maggie," a declaration that stirred my soul. It felt akin to a divine revelation, evoking tears of pure joy. We engaged in lovemaking 4 more times throughout the night and once more in the morning, each encounter as passionate as the last. It stood out as the most incredible carnal experience of my life, and I commended myself for allowing it with Alexander. Thoughts of Jason started to intrude, but I endeavored to focus on the man embracing me tightly. Bathed in the morning sunlight filtering through the curtains, we shared tender kisses, his fingers gently caressing my hair. Maggie, as I mentioned last night, I was sincere. You're an extraordinary woman, so alluring and sensual, and I believe I'm falling in love with you. Can we see each other again? Suddenly, apprehension gripped me, and I sought to be delicate. Alexander, it was an extraordinary experience, and you're a kind, wonderful man. However, I'm happily married, and I can't repeat it. It was a one-time event. I cherished it, and you were amazing. You're a fantastic lover, and every moment was enjoyable. Maggie, please think it over before you decline. Your husband doesn't appear to object, and if you allow this to continue, I can bring you great happiness. Just consider it before saying no. Please. All right, yes, I'll consider it. With another deep kiss, he held me close, and I surrendered to his embrace. If I weren't married to Jason, I'd be with Alexander in an instant. Yet Jason is my husband, and I hoped he could forgive me for my actions. Following breakfast, we departed the hotel, and as he drove me home, I switched on my phone for the first time since our date the previous night, stunned by the multitude of missed calls and texts. Seeing Jason's message, a pang of guilt pierced my heart. This dear man was in anguish and I was absent. Tears welled in my eyes, realizing I had caused his suffering. Before I could proceed to the next text, the phone rang as Alexander pulled into my neighborhood. "Mom, where are you?" "Hey, sweetie, I'm almost back home. Mom, there was a fire at the house. We tried calling you all night, but it seems you turned off your phone. Fire? Where's your dad? That's the thing, Mom. He's missing. Nobody knows where he is, and he's not picking up calls either. I have a bad feeling. Mom, I'm almost there. I'll call you back. As Alexander turned onto my street, I spotted a fire truck and police vehicles outside our house. Noticing no visible damage at the front, I inquired with the firefighters about the situation. "Are you the homeowner?" one of them asked, as curious neighbors eyed me standing beside an unfamiliar handsome man, my companion. "Yes, I'm Maggie Spencer." "Well, Mrs. Spencer, we managed to salvage the house. Only the rear porch suffered damage. However, you won't be able to stay here until professionals clean up the smoke residue inside. The cottage at the back, unfortunately, couldn't be saved." My legs gave way, and Alexander supported me, guiding me to sit on the curb. "Is she destroyed?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Spencer, but all that remains are charred remains. We'll investigate the cause of the fire, but for now, the police detective has a few inquiries for you." I hurriedly rose and headed towards the back of the house before Sergeant Wilson could interrogate me. He caught up as I stood before the remnants of my cherished sanctuary. Instantly, I suspected Jason's hand in this, a retaliatory act for my indiscretions. "Mrs. Spencer, do you have any idea what happened here?" inquired Sergeant Wilson. "No, I wasn't here last night, and I'm clueless about what transpired," I replied. "Are you her husband?" He redirected his question to Alexander. "No, just a friend," he answered. A blush crept up my face as the sergeant cast a knowing glance and inquired about my husband's whereabouts. "I told you, I don't know." When pressed about my own location last night, I timidly admitted to being with Alexander at the Hilton Hotel downtown. The scrutinizing looks from the sergeant and his assistant underscored the gravity of my situation. I had just confessed to not spending the night with my husband, who had also vanished. Now, the detective had more questions. "Mrs. Spencer, are you and your husband separated? Do you know where he was last night?" "No, we're happily married," I insisted, only to realize the absurdity after disclosing my nocturnal escapade. "Do you have any idea of his whereabouts?" "No, he's not answering calls." "We'll need to speak with him, so when you do, please provide him with my contact information," he instructed, handing me his card. Anger and fear surged within me. Anger at the loss of my sanctuary and years of labor, everything gone in an instant. Fear at the thought of Jason's potential rage and its implications for our marriage. I needed to reach him urgently. I dialed Brandy's number. "Brandy, have you heard from your dad?" "No, I haven't spoken to him since yesterday evening." "Why didn't you stay with him as planned?" "Mom, he kicked me out and disowned me," she revealed. Those words sent a shiver down my spine. Jason would never utter such words, and if he did, it would be far worse than I could fathom. Upon entering the house, I was met with smoke-damaged walls and a foul odor pervading our once cozy home. It was clear we couldn't stay here in such conditions. I surveyed the house and decided to gather clothes and personal items for a few days. In the bedroom, I found everything missing and panicked. My clothes, shoes, and belongings were gone. My heart sank as I searched for my wedding rings on the nightstand. None were there. Why had I left them? What was I thinking? If Jason saw them missing, he must have assumed the worst about our marriage. How foolish and selfish of me. In a panic, I scoured every room, realizing all my possessions were gone. A dreadful realization struck me. Had he truly destroyed everything? Was there nothing left? I rushed out of the house and returned to the studio, examining the remnants closely. Amidst the debris, I spotted photo frames and partially damaged clothing. It was evident Jason hadn't taken my day out as expected, but had obliterated everything dear to me, severing me from his life in one swift blow. I called Brandy in tears and recounted what had occurred, expressing my need for a place to stay. Alexander promptly offered his place, but he was the last person I wanted to see. I insisted on being alone and asked him to leave, hurting him with my abruptness. In that moment, anger swelled within me, directed both at myself and the man I had spent the night with. I recognized my wrongdoing, but unfairly placed blame on him for my selfish betrayal, when it was clearly my fault. "Brandy, I've lost your dad," I sobbed. "Mom, please don't say that," she pleaded. "Dad loves you, Mom," she reassured. "He burned everything, my clothes, paintings, my studio, all gone. He left me with nothing, not even a place to stay. He won't answer my calls. I hurt him the most, and I don't blame him. What I did is unforgivable. I should have talked to him instead of going on that date. We could have worked things out, but my selfishness drove him away. If I were in his shoes, I'd never take me back. What should I do now? I have nowhere to go, no clothes." "Mom, don't blame yourself. It's partly my fault. You can stay with us until your house is fixed today. We'll buy new clothes and get you settled tonight," Brandy offered. "Brandy, all my paintings and sculptures are gone. 30 years of marriage and 20 years of my work destroyed. And I'm left alone," I lamented, attracting the attention of neighbors passing by. "Oh my God, your dad's calling. I'll call you back." Struggling to answer the call, I nearly collapsed, but just managed to connect. "Jason, is that you?" I asked breathlessly. "Hi, Maggie, how are you?" "Jason, where are you? Please come home," I pleaded. "No, Maggie. I know everything from your daughter. Yes, your daughter, not mine. You're both dead to me. And this may be the last time we talk." "Jason, no, please don't say that. I love you. You need to know this," I begged. "Jason, the studio is gone." "Did you do this?" he demanded. "Maggie, you did it. Not me. Maybe not physically, but you incinerated it with your betrayal. When I saw your wedding rings discarded and you gave yourself to another, you died in my heart. Your actions are unforgivable. And Brandy's involvement is shameful and incomprehensible. We're finished. I'll see my lawyers on Monday to start the process. Please, Jason, can't we talk and work things out? You can't just discard our 30 wonderful years like this," I implored. "Maggie, we're talking. And I'm not the one discarding our 30 wonderful years. You planned to betray me, gave me 2 weeks of amazing love to ease your guilt, then cheated with your daughter's help. No one could accept or forgive such treachery. It was pure evil. I hope you regret it for the rest of your pathetic life. This is our last conversation. Contact my attorney for anything further. Goodbye, Maggie." "Jason, hold on. Jason. Jason had vanished, taking with him the world I cherished and loved. Brandy arrived just as I was desperately calling Jason, who had already ended the call. We embraced, tears streaming down our faces as we mourned our loss. Eventually, we realized we couldn't stay amidst the wreckage of what was once our home. While authorities investigated the fire, we needed to regroup, so we headed to Brandy's house. Upon arrival, Brandy recounted the entire ordeal to Mike, who was taken aback by her explanation. Brandy attempted to explain everything, but when Mike discovered that his wife had arranged a date for her mother with a friend's father, he was appalled and furious. His anger flared. "Brandy, you set up a date for your mother with another man. And worse, you knew your father would be alone. You should have known he wouldn't stand for it. What kind of man would allow his wife to go out with someone else? Is this what you envision for our future? Will you willingly betray me like your mother did to your father? He was a good man. You and your mom were his whole world. What have you done, Brandy? Let me tell you. You've shattered a good man and pushed him to extremes. I can't express how disappointed I am in you. I'll reach out to him and apologize for your thoughtlessness, but we also need to talk about us. Having children with you is on hold until I figure out where your values lie. I'll be blunt. I don't share them, and I won't tolerate such betrayal." She was taken aback by his anger and dismayed by his lack of understanding of her mother's predicament. It was just one date after 30 years of marriage, for heaven's sake. So what? Later, she realized the real issue was the collapse of her parents' marriage, her father's departure, and her mother's shattered happiness. Soon, they would all face the consequences of her actions.
5 days later, I returned home to assess the damage. Opting against an insurance claim to avoid additional costs, I informed the lawyer that the house was solely mine, not part of the settlement. Maggie could receive half our savings and no child support. If she resisted, I'd file for infidelity, exposing her affair with our daughter's friend's father. Divorce papers were filed, and I inquired about a criminal arson lawyer, but realized criminal prosecution was unlikely without an insurance claim. In the worst case, fines might be issued, but no charges would proceed unless a false report was filed. A neighbor, acquainted with Brandy from school, called her when she saw me return. Brandy rushed over as I inspected the damage. Hearing her enter, I focused on the task, glancing at the ashes that once housed Maggie's studio. Brandy found me in a bedroom, embracing me tightly. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. Please forgive us. We love you." "Brandy, I can't forgive either of you. I told you not to speak to me again. Now leave me be." "No, you're my father, and you have to forgive me. Will you come over?" "Never. Our marriage ended the moment she went on that date and left her wedding rings. It's over, and I won't speak to her. You can both contact me through my lawyer. I'll get a new phone and number. But for now, leave and be with your mother." "Are you really ending 30 years of marriage?" "No, your mother did that when she took off her rings and went to her lover. You both destroyed my happiness, and I won't forget or forgive. Get out." Brandy left in tears, devastated by her father's disownment. His words cut deep, leaving a lasting pain that no therapy could heal. The following day, Maggie received divorce papers and was overwhelmed. Realizing her marriage ended due to her infidelity, she attempted to reconcile, sought counseling, and tried talking to Jason, but he remained silent toward her and Brandy. Mike eventually reached Jason, expressing his dismay at the girl's actions. He reconsidered having children due to doubts about Brandy's loyalty and involvement in the affair. Mike couldn't imagine living with someone with such values and is now in couples counseling to salvage their marriage. Maggie hoped to return to the rebuilt house, but the divorce decree awarded it to Jason. She received half their savings and $3,000 monthly child support for 10 years, which he had no intention of paying. Maggie must find employment to support herself, a responsibility she hadn't faced during their 30-year marriage. She eventually relocated from her daughter's apartment to a small one-room flat near the city center, where she secured employment at a small art gallery as a sales agent to make ends meet. Maggie's artistic freedom faced a sudden threat. No longer could she devote all her time to the splendid studio crafted by Jason, nor could she sit amid her art projects, savoring the serene lake view through the expansive panoramic windows gifted by her husband. Soon, work consumed her schedule, leaving little time to recreate the life she once knew. Gone were the days of leisure, along with her opulent and contented marriage, all for one exhilarating night with another man. There were never enough tears to erase the agony and remorse from that one-time affair. Knowing her beloved husband Jason would never speak to her again, especially after disowning their daughter, shattered her heart. Brandy spiraled into a deep depression following her parents' divorce, seeking solace and salvaging her crumbling marriage through therapy. Months later, the house was restored, and Jason continued to fulfill the court-mandated compensation. Without forewarning, he sold the house. Following the sale, Maggie approached him, seeking reconciliation and forgiveness. When she pressed the doorbell, a young couple welcomed her as they opened the door. "Hello, how can we assist you?" the woman inquired. "Yes, I'm seeking Jason Spencer." "He's here." "Oh, the kind man who sold us this house." "No, he mentioned he was leaving the country for a fresh start. He was incredibly pleasant and helpful. Are you Maggie by any chance?" "Yes, that's me." "He left an envelope and instructed us to give it to you if you ever came by." "Thank you. I'll read it later. Best wishes and enjoy this lovely home." Maggie sat in the car, tears streaming down her face, realizing she'd never encounter Jason again, and lamenting the love she had recklessly discarded. Returning to her solitary apartment, she sat on the bed, her hand trembling as she unfolded the letter. "Maggie, 30 remarkable years. I'll forever cherish the beautiful life we shared. You were my first and only love. I deeply regret not fulfilling my role as your husband. Had I known you needed more, I would have moved mountains for you. But since you've chosen to forge your path alone, that's how our marriage will conclude. Alone. Those 2 wonderful weeks leading up to your betrayal, I actually believed you had rekindled your love for me. They were the happiest weeks of our entire marriage. Learning from Brandy how you used those weeks to divert my attention from your betrayal shattered my soul. I'm certain your daughter has already informed you, but that night I was thrilled to come home and give you a special evening with 2 dozen roses, your favorite chocolates, and wine. I planned to surprise you with a yacht cruise. Love. Discovering that your affection and admiration were insincere, and your true aim was to be with another man, left me utterly humiliated. Congratulations. You've destroyed me and our marriage. Because of this, I can't stay in this city any longer. I've resigned from my job and started a new life in another country. Don't bother looking for me, as I'll be off the grid. I have no desire to speak to you or your daughter anymore. This chapter of my life is closed, and I'm embarking on a new journey without you. It'll take me years to recover from the pain and betrayal you both inflicted. I couldn't bear to stay in our beautiful home without the love of my life and our wonderful daughter. Since you're both dead to me now, I have no reason to remain here. I sincerely hope your special night was worth our marriage and my love. I suspect it was. I'm certain you and your daughter will relish sharing stories. Have a happy life. And please forget about me and our years together, as I already have. My new life has already begun without you. Maggie believed she had no tears left, but after reading his letter, she cried uncontrollably all night, curled up in a ball. The excitement and memories of her encounter with Alexander faded into regret and sadness. Now 52 and alone, she foresaw a bleak future without Jason. She traded her luxurious life for one night of selfish thrill. Jason confronted Alexander late at night as he was departing for Ecuador. Pushing into the house, Jason introduced himself as Maggie's husband, accusing Alexander of stealing her. Despite Alexander's attempts to explain, Jason refused to accept any excuses. His pent-up anger and pain were unleashed on the man before him. Their exchange was brief as Jason wielded a crowbar. In less than a minute, Alexander's life changed forever. Before departing for the airport and leaving the country, Jason warned him, "I offer advice, idiot. Sleeping with a married woman is detrimental to your health." By the time Alexander reached the ER and informed the police, Jason was already on his way to a new life in Ecuador, free from his past burdens and family. It took detectives 2 weeks to ascertain Jason's departure and realize they couldn't pursue him until his return, with no extradition from Ecuador for assault charges. Alexander endured agonizing weeks in the hospital and months in physical therapy, adjusting to his new reality with reconstructed knees. The 25 stitches on his face would forever remind him of that fateful night with a married woman. Uncertain of his future, he knew his former life was irretrievably lost. Because of those 2 women who encouraged him to pursue another man's wife, he cut ties with Maggie and Brandy completely. Brandy's husband, Mike, almost ended their marriage over the incident. However, with the help of a psychologist, Brandy came to terms with her actions, vowing to remain faithful to Mike and their future family. Mike waited 2 years before agreeing to have children, ensuring his wife's commitment to fidelity. Honoring his promise and her remorse, Jason ceased all communication with Brandy. Through her actions, she permanently severed ties with her father and his affection. Hearing about Alexander's assault, Maggie and Brandy were devastated, feeling accountable for the attack and amplifying the guilt and anguish they inflicted on Jason and their family's ruin. It served as another stark reminder of the far-reaching consequences of their actions, unbeknownst to them. They both realized that their naive belief, that if only Jason had granted Maggie that one night their blissful life would have endured, was misguided. Their folly shattered any semblance of happiness. The loss of their father and husband inflicted a lasting pain they would carry until their final days. Hindered by depression and advancing age, Maggie never found another partner, leading a desolate, sorrowful existence. Their dreams of a joyful twilight with Jason and their grandchildren became a distant memory, especially since Jason ceased child support as soon as he left the country. Her savings won't last long, and she'll have to continue working to survive. Crying in her sleep became her usual activity. After selling my house and using my savings accumulated over 3 decades, I now possess more than $750,000. Deducting the cost of my new apartment, this substantial sum ensures comfort and tranquility for the next 30 years here in Ecuador. In this country, I've encountered many young, attractive women who appreciate the generosity of an American man, and I relish spending time with them. 6 months following that fateful night, I found myself on the beach in Puerto Lopez, sipping a cold beer in front of my new apartment. It dawned on me that divorce is a natural occurrence, and parting ways is acceptable. Being alone is okay. What's not acceptable is remaining in a situation where one is neither valued nor cherished. This will never be my reality again.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I'm currently navigating an incredibly challenging and emotionally tumultuous situation, one that I never thought I'd have to face. It all began against the backdrop of what seemed like a successful and fulfilling life. I was juggling a full-time job in a lucrative industry, earning a comfortable 6-figure salary, all while serving in the National Guard. Physically, I was in great shape, and I even managed to build my own house on a small farm, a project that filled me with pride. The relationship side of my life was equally significant. I had been with my partner for 11 years, and we took the step to get married just 2 years ago. We were in the process of planning to start a family, a dream we both shared. But then, the unimaginable happened. During my combat deployment, which kept me away for an extended period of over 6 months, I stumbled upon a shocking discovery. It was as though the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I learned that during my absence, my wife had an affair with the man she had hired to fix our fence. What stung even more was the realization that they had engaged in unprotected intimacy multiple times, and she had developed strong feelings for him. They shared experiences and emotions that she had never shared with me before. It was as if she had found the small-town cowboy she had always longed for, a persona I couldn't possibly embody. I had been living a life far removed from that image, and now I was grappling with the painful truth that she had found something in someone else that she couldn't find in me. What makes the situation even more complex is that my wife remains completely unaware that I know the full extent of their infidelity. Her behavior has been undeniably strange since I returned home. She claims she lived alone for a year, adjusting to my absence, but deep down, I can't help but believe that the real reason she's still with me is that I never left her, even when I discovered the betrayal. The question now is how to proceed, how to navigate the wreckage of trust and love that has been shattered by this shocking revelation. I find myself in a situation that's beyond anything I could have ever imagined. It's difficult to make sense of how everything has unraveled. I've always taken pride in being a responsible provider and protector, and yet, my wife chose to have an affair with a younger, attractive cowboy who, to make matters more complicated, is already married with kids and apparently sleeps with clients. The shock and pain run deep because my wife discussed starting a family with this other man, planning a life together, and even talked about having kids. Meanwhile, she's leading this double life, pretending that everything between us is perfectly fine. It's a painful paradox to witness her making plans for our future, like our planting season and buying more chickens, while she continues to deceive me on such a profound level. It's been incredibly difficult to maintain my composure throughout all of this. The military taught me to be stoic and tough, but I've reached a breaking point. I've confided in my Catholic best friend, sharing every detail of this heartbreaking situation with him. He believes in trying to salvage the relationship, but I'm beginning to lean toward filing for divorce and ending this chapter of my life. I'm convinced that even remaining friends seems impossible at this point. So, I've taken the initial steps by setting up meetings with 2 lawyers to begin the process of ending our marriage. What makes this situation even more emotionally taxing is my suspicion that my wife may lack remorse for her actions, leading me to wonder if she might be a sociopath. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to secure any in-person therapy sessions yet, as the earliest appointments are still over 3 weeks away, which is incredibly frustrating given the urgency of the situation. Just recently, I mustered the courage to confide in my mother and my closest friends. It was an emotionally challenging conversation, but their support and understanding have been a lifeline. I haven't confronted my wife about my knowledge of her affair yet, but I'm making preparations to do so. In just 2 days, I have legal consultations scheduled to begin the divorce process, as it seems increasingly clear that this relationship cannot be salvaged. The situation has escalated significantly, and I've taken some decisive steps to confront my wife about her affair. I decided to hire a private investigator, and the information that surfaced was nothing short of alarming. The man involved in the affair has multiple aliases, a suspended license, and a prior conviction. He's 28 years old, married with 2 children, and shockingly, he lives just a mere 15 minutes away from our home. Last night, my emotional turmoil reached a breaking point. I experienced a panic attack and woke up in tears while she slept beside me. When I apologized for my distress, she suggested that it might be related to workout supplements or something I picked up during my overseas deployment. I couldn't help but wonder if she was intentionally manipulating me or if she genuinely had no idea about the extent of the situation. The next day, I woke up after working the night shift at the refinery. My private investigator had informed me that she had lunch with this man at Qdoba while I was sleeping, despite her earlier claim of being out shopping. Confronting her about this blatant lie became inevitable. I had carefully planned to do so on her birthday, as I wanted to be in control of the situation and ensure closure on my terms. The day arrived, and it was surprisingly beautiful, considering the turmoil that was about to unfold. I woke up early, strangely calm, and prepared myself for the difficult conversation ahead. A long and strenuous workout helped clear my head. As my wife came home in the early evening, she looked radiant and excited. She had spent the day shopping and making herself look beautiful for her big day. I handed her a beautifully wrapped box, and her eyes sparkled with anticipation as she tore it open. The disappointment and shock on her face were undeniable when she found the neatly folded divorce papers inside. I mustered the strength to tell her about the affair, the involvement with the cowboy, and the countless lies that had built up over time. Each word I uttered felt like a heavy blow to her stomach. She collapsed, crying and pleading for forgiveness, but it was painfully clear that it was too late for reconciliation. The moment her parents called to wish her a happy birthday, I decided to lay everything bare. It was a gut-wrenching decision, but I knew it was the right thing to do. As they congratulated her on her special day, I couldn't bear the weight of the lies any longer. I began to tell them the painful truth, and all I heard on the other end was my mother-in-law's anguished screams. It was a devastating moment, and I knew there was no turning back. I had made up my mind to make her infidelity public. I sent emails to her family, friends, and colleagues, providing them with evidence of her betrayal. I was done protecting her reputation when she had shattered my trust so profoundly. The shock in her eyes was unmistakable as she answered call after call, her sobs and apologies filling the room. It was far from the birthday celebration she had envisioned. Finally, it was time for the last part of my plan. I swung open the front door, and right there on the porch were all her belongings. She was no longer welcome in our home. Her begging turned into loud cries, but I remained resolute. She had to gather her things and leave. A few days later, her sister and family began to gaslight me, placing the blame on me for the situation. They dismissed the fact that she had engaged in unprotected contact with another man, attributing it to my emotional unavailability. My wife even went as far as telling the cowboy's wife that everything was fabricated. Her family seemed to prioritize her over me, implying that I wasn't considered part of their family. They sided with her instead of helping us heal. Despite suggestions of individual therapy and working things out, my wife remained convinced that she could manipulate me into staying. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, she signed the divorce paperwork this morning, and I filed it. We had a lengthy conversation where she expressed a strong desire to repair our marriage, rating it at a 10 out of 10. She promised to make a sincere effort over the next 89 days to demonstrate her commitment. However, I couldn't find it in me to care anymore. It's been a few weeks now, and her calls and texts come less frequently. I've heard from mutual friends that she's not doing well, that she's miserable, alone, and filled with regret. She's reportedly searching for houses in Texas and attempting to transfer with her company. Today, on May 12th, the divorce has been finalized, marking the end of a painful chapter in both our lives. The aftermath of my divorce has brought significant changes to both of our lives. I ended up keeping the house while she made the decision to move to Texas and change jobs. Throughout this entire process, she has shown no remorse and has never taken responsibility for the destruction of our life together. Returning home from my challenging deployment in the Middle East to a situation that ultimately led to divorce was even more difficult to bear. These past few months since my return have unquestionably been the toughest period of my life. Every story has two sides, but this specific situation completely shattered me as a man. It felt like it broke me down to my very core, testing the foundation of who I am. I've had to rediscover my vulnerability and rely on the faith I found overseas as a source of strength. For that, I am profoundly grateful. Understanding why people commit hurtful actions or betray others has been a challenging question that I still don't have answers to. However, I've come to believe that everything happens for a purpose, even if that purpose was to show me that building a family and life with a specific person wasn't the intended path for me. My faith, the unwavering support of my closest friends from the academy, my friends and family back home, and the constant check-ins from the men and women I deployed with have been my lifelines during these dark moments. To those who consistently called and texted me during my darkest hours, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude. Your support meant the world to me. Now, it's time for a new chapter, a fresh beginning with someone who genuinely desires to create those stories alongside me. This experience has reshaped my perspective on life and relationships, and I'm hopeful for what the future holds. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
In a quaint suburban neighborhood, the Parker family was known for their close-knit bond and joyful gatherings. They often spent their evenings sharing stories, laughter, and delicious home-cooked meals. This particular night was no different. The atmosphere was filled with warmth and camaraderie as they enjoyed their dinner together. As the evening of lighthearted conversation and joy drew to a close, The doorbell rang unexpectedly. Lori, the enthusiastic 12-year-old, leaped up from her seat, punching her father and brother to the door. She quickly returned to the dining area, her expression marked by confusion. "A police officer is here, Dad. He wants to have a word with you," she announced. Frank felt a surge of anxiety, but managed to keep his composure for the sake of his children. He approached the door and was greeted by a Georgia State Trooper. "Are you Frank Parker?" inquired the officer. "Yes, that's me," Frank replied. "And are you Meredith Parker's spouse?" With a nod from Frank, the trooper glanced at the children and requested, "Could we talk in private, Mr. Parker?" Frank felt his throat tighten and cleared it before speaking. "Bobby, Lori, go to your rooms. I need to talk to the officer alone." The children started to protest, but when their father snapped, "Now!" they quickly obeyed. They weren't used to hearing such a tone. Once they left, the officer turned to Frank. "Mr. Parker, I have bad news. Your wife's plane is missing and presumed shot down. It vanished from radar tonight halfway between Miami International Airport and Nassau. A Coast Guard ship is searching for survivors." The situation was clear. Meredith, the VP of regional sales for a large multinational company, was traveling with the region's CFO to the company's Caribbean headquarters. An experienced pilot, Meredith's 180-mile flight to Nassau should have been routine. Frank hadn't worried when she called to inform him of her plans. Now he was distraught, facing his worst nightmare. His wife's plane had crashed in shark-infested Caribbean waters. The officer gave a few more details, none of which reassured Frank, and promised the Coast Guard would call in the morning or sooner with any news. As soon as the officer left, Bobby and Lori rushed to Frank, their faces full of concern, asking questions he couldn't answer. He knew they'd been eavesdropping. They huddled together, trying to console one another. Lori started crying, and Bobby's eyes reddened. Frank tried to stay composed for his children, but inside he was furious. They couldn't focus on dishes or homework and spent the evening clinging to each other. Though it was past their bedtime, they waited for a call that never came. Finally, exhausted and scared, the three of them fell asleep together in Frank's bed for the first time since the kids were little. The next morning, while attempting to eat breakfast, a Coast Guard representative called. Any hope was quickly dashed when they reported no findings. Frank called the children's school principal to explain their absence, then found Bobby and Lori watching CNN's coverage of the missing plane. Unsure if he should let them watch, the phone rang again, starting a cascade of calls. Meredith's parents and his own were the first, all trying to sound optimistic despite their worry. Frank promised to update them with any news. Calls from Meredith's friends and coworkers followed, each wanting to help but unsure how. The conversations were brief and awkward. The hardest calls were from the media. Caught off guard, Frank talked longer than he wanted with a reporter from the Journal-Constitution. Realizing the pattern, he started screening calls, answering only those from loved ones. Neighbors and friends began arriving with condolences and food. Initially, Frank appreciated the meals, lacking energy to cook, but soon they had more than they could eat. Each dish, a Southern tradition to show concern, became a painful reminder of his likely loss. The next few days were horrible. The Parkers, practically prisoners in their home, avoided people and clung to the hope of news from the Coast Guard. Frank called the Miami office daily, but the reports were always negative. 5 days later, a Coast Guard officer called with the dreaded news. Wreckage of Meredith's plane was found with no sign of survivors. "I'm sorry, sir," the officer concluded, "but we have to stop search and rescue efforts." Frank wanted to hide and mourn alone, but there was no chance for that. He faced an overwhelming list of responsibilities, starting with breaking the sad news to Bobby and Lori and comforting them. Once they calmed down, he had to call family and friends, arrange a memorial service, and write an obituary. By the end, Frank was exhausted. The family endured the service and began the slow process of returning to normal life. The children went back to school, which helped a bit, but Frank struggled with new responsibilities. On a friend's advice, he contacted a lawyer about legal matters and was shocked to learn he needed a pass-away certificate. "But her plane crashed at sea," Frank protested. "I know," the lawyer said, "but without a body, the court must issue an official statement. Do I really have to wait 7 years?" "No," the lawyer assured him. "Cases like this usually resolve quickly. I'll draft a petition and help you amend other documents like bank accounts, mortgages, and insurance." Frank, overwhelmed, knew he also had to contact his wife's company about benefits. He dreaded calling the widow of John Collier, the CFO on the plane with Meredith. Though Frank disliked Collier, he felt it was his duty. When he called, Amanda Collier was already waiting. As they exchanged condolences, Frank realized she understood his grief. She asked, "How are you, Frank?" "It's hard, Amanda. I can't accept she's gone. Everything reminds me of her. I keep thinking I see her in crowds." He looked at the floor, overcome with emotion. Amanda knew no words would help. "And you, Amanda? How are you?" "It's not easy, but I'm managing," she said. "John and I didn't have kids, so it's different for me. We didn't get along before this. If he hadn't died, we were headed for divorce." "I'm sorry to hear that," Frank said sympathetically. "One moment I'm relieved I don't have to deal with his affairs, and the next I feel guilty for not being sadder. But some part of me still misses him." "Will you be okay financially?" Frank asked. "I'll manage. The company insured John's life, so I'll get twice the face value. But he made bad investments, and we lost a lot of money." Frank wasn't surprised by John Collier's behavior. Amanda's mention of company-paid life insurance reminded him to contact Meredith's benefits department. After chatting a bit longer, Frank rose to leave. "Amanda, I'm sorry, but I have to leave. Bobby and Lori will be out of school soon, and I need to pick them up. Please keep in touch, and if you need anything, even just to talk, call me." When Frank arrived home with Bobby and Lori, he was surprised to see a car parked outside. Leading the children through the garage, the doorbell rang. Outside stood a man in his 50s and a young woman in business attire. "I'm Special Agent Harold Barnes, and this is Special Agent Celia Murray. We're with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. We'd like to ask you some questions about your wife's disappearance." Lori clung to her father's waist, tears soaking his shirt. "What does that mean?" Frank demanded angrily. Agent Murray intervened. "I'm sorry we upset your daughter, Mr. Parker. We're just doing a routine check related to your application for Mrs. Parker's pass-away certificate. We can come back later if you prefer." Frank reassured his daughter. "It's okay, sweetheart. Nothing bad happened." Agent Murray knelt and offered Lori a napkin, which she hesitantly took to wipe her eyes. Frank then sent Lori to her room to do her homework. Turning to the agents, Frank said, "If it won't take long, let's get it over with." They moved to the living room and sat around the coffee table. "We need some information about your wife," Agent Barnes began. "How long were you married?" "Since 1990, right after we graduated from the University of Georgia," Frank replied, recalling the beautiful brunette he had married. "And she worked for the International Marketing Corporation until she disappeared." "Yes, she was the VP of sales for the southeastern U.S. Why would she go to the Bahamas?" Agent Murray asked. "The southeast region included Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. Their Caribbean headquarters was in Nassau, so Mary often flew there." "Mary?" the woman inquired. "Mary was my pet name for her," Frank said hoarsely. Agent Murray patted him on the shoulder. "It's okay, Mr. Parker. I know this is hard." Agent Barnes changed the subject. "Did your wife normally fly her own plane for business trips?" "Yes, her father was a pilot, and she got her license young. She preferred flying herself to stay independent of commercial airline schedules." "What about you, Mr. Parker? What do you do?" "I'm a house husband," Frank smiled. "I was an aerospace engineer until 3 years ago when my company downsized. Moving for a new job wasn't an option, but Mary's career was thriving, so we decided I'd handle the household and kids." "And how did this change affect your relationship?" Agent Barnes asked. "What's that got to do with it?" Frank snapped. Agent Murray interjected. "We need to see if any factors played a role in your wife's disappearance. This is routine." Frank calmed down. "It was a big change, but as an engineer, I evaluated all factors. It made sense for our family. Mary focused on her career, and I took care of Bobby and Lori." The agents were silent, and Frank continued. "It wasn't easy. She was often busy with clients and meetings, and I felt her work came first. But that's common in corporate life, and things were going well." "Two more questions, Mr. Parker," Agent Barnes said. "Did you notice any changes in your wife's behavior before she disappeared?" "Not really," Frank replied after a moment. "She was under a lot of pressure and traveling more, but Mary said she was in line for a promotion that would reduce her travel and come with a higher position and pay." "One last question," Agent Barnes said, taking notes. "Are you aware of any recent changes in your finances?" "No," Frank answered confidently. "I manage our finances and haven't noticed anything unusual." Agent Murray handed Frank her card. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. If you think of anything else, please call me." The agents left, and Frank checked on his children, who were busy with homework. "They're strong kids," he thought. "They've been through a lot and are holding up well." The next day, Frank visited IMC headquarters to discuss Meredith's benefits. The head of the department expressed condolences and handed him a box of Meredith's belongings, including a family portrait. A specialist reviewed Meredith's 401k account with Frank, revealing it was much higher than expected due to increased contributions. The specialist advised him to transfer the funds to his own IRA for easier management. Frank also learned about the substantial insurance benefit Meredith had chosen, which would provide her income for almost 4 years. The insurance company will pay annually to minimize taxes, the specialist explained, contingent on receiving Meredith's pass-away certificate. After meeting with the GBI agents, Frank was confident it would arrive soon. Relieved, he realized he wouldn't need to find a job immediately. "Thank you, Mary," he whispered. A few days later, as Frank prepared dinner, the doorbell rang. Special Agent Murray stood there and informed him the investigation was complete and the pass-away certificate issued. Frank sighed in relief. Suddenly, Lori's panicked cry came from the back of the house. "Daddy, help me!" Frank rushed to her room with Agent Murray following. Lori was staring at a large red stain on her jeans. "I'm bleeding, Daddy!" she cried. "What happened, Lori?" Frank asked, horrified. Agent Murray stepped in. "Let me handle this," she said firmly, pushing Frank toward the door. "Wait in the living room." After 15 anxious minutes, Celia emerged. "Lori's fine. You need to go to the store and buy sanitary napkins. Get the smallest size." "But Lori, Bobby," Frank started to protest. "I'll take care of Lori and explain to Bobby. You go to the store and hurry back," she insisted. On the way, Frank realized Lori was menstruating. He berated himself for not having talked to her about growing up. "Oh, Mary, I need you more than ever," Frank thought. When he got home, Celia met him at the door and took the package. "You did good, Daddy," she said, smiling. She went into Lori's room. After 30 minutes, Celia reappeared, hugging Lori. Frank knelt and hugged his daughter. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I should have talked to you about this earlier." "It's all right, Daddy," Lori said. "I just got scared. Celia explained it all to me. Now I know what to do." She held Celia's hand, and Frank realized his daughter had made a new friend. He turned to Celia. "Thank you. It's good you were here. I'm not great with girls." Celia smiled, but Bobby interrupted. "Does this mean we won't have dinner tonight? I'm starving." Lori shrieked, but Frank held her back. "Bobby, if you talk to your sister like that again, you'll go to bed hungry," Frank warned. "Now go wash your hands and set the table." He turned to Celia. "Please join us for dinner." Celia hesitated, but Lori tugged her arm. "Please, Celia, stay." Celia smiled and agreed. At dinner, the kids bombarded Celia with questions about law enforcement. Frank was amused and relieved to see his children coming out of their sorrow. After dinner, Frank offered Celia coffee. "You seem comfortable with kids. Do you work with them often?" he asked. "I come from a big family, 2 brothers and 3 sisters. I was the oldest, so I was like a second mom," Celia explained. "That's why I knew what to do with Lori. I helped my sisters through puberty." Frank grinned. "I'm glad you were here. I wouldn't have known how to calm Lori." Celia's expression turned serious. "How are they coping with their mother's loss?" Frank sighed. "Lori is very clingy and Bobby is moody and withdrawn. I don't know if it's because of Mary's pass away or his teenage years." Celia looked at him sympathetically. "You're doing a great job. It will take time for all of you." She stood up. "I've intruded long enough. I'd like to say goodbye to Lori and Bobby." She hugged Lori, who walked with her arm around Celia's waist. She really has a new friend, Frank thought. A few days later, a package arrived for Lori, a pink stuffed elephant and a note from Celia. Frank was puzzled by the choice, but was surprised to see it take a prominent place on Lori's bed. "I guess she still has a little girl in her," he admitted. He called Celia to thank her. Celia was pleased and asked Frank to keep in touch. Weeks later, Bobby's teacher called to discuss discipline problems. Frank scheduled a meeting for the next day, but decided not to tell Bobby until he knew more. Mrs. Soldana, the home grade teacher, told Frank that Bobby's behavior had worsened over the past few months. "At first, I didn't want to say anything because I know he's been through a lot," the teacher explained. "But it seems to be getting worse. He's distracted, not doing homework, and not paying attention in class. If this continues, his grades will drop significantly." Frank was concerned. "How much of this is just being a teenager?" he asked. "It's a difficult age, especially for boys," she replied. "But I think his mother's pass away is affecting him more than he admits. You might want to see a psychologist." Frank thanked her and waited anxiously for the kids to finish gym class. Determined to talk to Bobby, he sent Lori to her room for homework and took Bobby to the master bedroom. Seeing his father's serious expression, Bobby knew he was in trouble. Frank recounted the teacher's concerns. "What's going on, Bobby? Why are you acting like this?" Frank demanded. "Just because," Bobby muttered. "Don't you care about your grades?" Frank pressed. "Not really," Bobby replied sullenly. Annoyed by his son's unresponsiveness, Frank tried to shame him. "What would your mother think?" "Who cares? She was a strumpet," Bobby shouted angrily. Shocked, Frank grabbed his son. "Don't talk about your mother like that. How can you say that?" Bobby whispered. "I saw her with another man." Bobby collapsed onto the bed, sobbing. Frank sat next to him, holding him. "It's okay," he repeated, trying to calm him. When Bobby's crying subsided, Frank asked gently, "Tell me what you saw." "It was last fall. I forgot my homework and sneaked home. I heard my mom come in and hid. I heard a man's voice. They went to your room, and when I looked in, they were on the bed." Bobby's words tumbled out, and he burst into tears again. "Why did she do that, Daddy? How could she be such a strumpet?" Frank felt numb but focused on comforting Bobby. "Sometimes people make mistakes. It doesn't mean we don't love them. Your mother loved you and Lori very much. Remember the good things about her." Frank talked to Bobby until he calmed down, then sent him to do homework. He asked Bobby not to tell Lori, and Bobby promised. The rest of the evening passed quietly. After the kids went to bed, Frank grappled with his emotions. At first, he wanted to deny what Bobby had seen, but he knew his son was too upset to have misunderstood. Frank felt betrayed. How could Mary have cheated on him? Who was the man? How long had it been going on? Losing her in a plane crash was hard, but realizing he lost her long before was devastating. He couldn't sleep that night. The next day, Frank went to the gym, hoping exercise would distract him. But while on the treadmill, his thoughts returned to Mary's infidelity. How could she do that in our bed? It must have been one of those days when I went to the gym, he realized. His habitual routine had made it easy for her to plan. If she planned her meetings around my schedule, it wasn't sudden. How often did she meet him? Her travel could have interfered. Each question led to more misery. Frank tried to act normal around Bobby and Lori, but he was suffering. He went to the pharmacy for antacids, having never had stomach problems before. He had no one to talk to about his discovery. Telling his parents or Meredith's family would devastate them, and he didn't want neighborhood gossip or classmates teasing his kids. He felt trapped. One evening, he saw Celia Murray's business card. Desperate to share his news, he called her. Celia was pleased to hear from him, but concerned when he said he needed to talk. "Are Lori and Bobby okay?" she asked. "They're fine, but I'm not. Can we have lunch tomorrow?" She agreed and suggested a quiet place near her office. Frank felt relieved. Celia was waiting at the restaurant. Seeing his distressed face, she asked, "For heaven's sake, Frank, what's wrong?" "You asked for more information about my wife," he began. "I found out Meredith was cheating on me." Tears filled his eyes. Celia reached for his hands. "Oh, Frank, that's terrible. Tell me everything." He recounted the teacher meeting, confronting Bobby and Bobby's revelation. Celia listened silently. "Poor Bobby," she said. "No wonder he's struggling at school. And with her pass away, he's even more troubled." She squeezed Frank's hands. "I can't imagine what you're going through. Did you see any signs?" "No," he replied. "The husband is always the last to know. Our Zek's life declined after her promotion, but I thought it was due to her job pressure. She said things would get better, but that didn't happen." He frowned. "I have no answers. Who was he? How long did it last? Did she plan to leave me? Why did she do this to us?" Celia squeezed his hands again. "Frank, you may never get answers. With her gone, it doesn't matter anymore. Focus on your family and yourself." "I know you're right, but it hurts. I think when she stopped loving me—" "No," Celia said firmly. "Meredith cared deeply about you and the kids. She got maximum life insurance and maxed out her 401k to ensure your future. She cared." "Thank you, Celia. I'll try to remember that." As they stood to leave, he noticed neither had touched their food. "I guess I'm not good lunch company." "Don't worry," she replied. "Skipping a meal or two is probably good for me." He looked at her and thought, "She looks good to me." "Stay in touch, Frank, and let me know if I can help." She kissed his cheek, and as she turned away, Frank thought he saw her blush. Back at home, Frank felt surprisingly lighter. "I guess I really needed to talk it out," he thought. The following Saturday, while cleaning up storm debris in the yard, Frank noticed Lori on the phone. He asked Bobby, "Did someone call?" "No," Bobby replied. "She's talking to her new best friend, Celia." "Does she call Celia a lot, and what's a BFF?" "Oh, Dad," Bobby sighed. BFF means best friend forever. Lori looked up and asked, "Daddy, can we take Celia to dinner?" "Let me talk to her," Frank said, taking the phone. "Hi, Celia. Would you like to have dinner with us tonight?" She quickly agreed. "Great. See you around 6 o'clock, Frank said, turning to Lori. "She's coming. Let's clean up so she doesn't think we live like pigs." "Oh, Dad, do I have to?" Bobby complained, but started tidying up. Frank decided to make a special fish dish, which meant a trip to the grocery store. He found a nice piece of salmon, picked up dessert, a bottle of wine, and a bouquet of flowers. "I guess I'm going all out," he thought. Celia arrived at 6 o'clock, and Lori welcomed her in. Even Bobby made polite conversation. Frank felt a bit awkward, but Celia didn't seem to notice. She chatted with Lori and explored her room while Frank finished dinner. The meal was a success, and Celia teased, "Oh, a man who can cook. Mother warned me about you." After dinner, Celia helped with the cleanup. With the kids occupied, Frank and Celia filled their wine glasses and moved to the living room. "Frank, dinner was wonderful. Thank you for inviting me." "Lori wouldn't forgive me if I hadn't," Frank laughed. "She's a wonderful girl, and you're doing a great job," Celia said. Then her tone changed. "Frank, I have some confidential information to share. You know the GBI conducted a routine investigation before issuing your wife's pass-away certificate. We found nothing unusual. But with John Collier, we discovered some oddities. He was in financial trouble due to bad investments." Frank nodded, recalling what Amanda Collier had told him. IMC Security found significant irregularities in the Southeastern Accounting Department, headed by John Collier. They uncovered a fraudulent billing scheme that may have embezzled millions from IMC, and John Collier appears to have authorized it. "Poor Amanda," Frank commented. "She didn't deserve that." But Celia's revelations sparked new thoughts. Could Collier have caused the crash to cover his tracks? What if Meredith found out? Could he be hiding somewhere? Frank speculated. "Frank, you're getting carried away," Celia cautioned. "The most likely scenario is still the plane going down unexpectedly. We'll explore all possibilities, but don't jump to conclusions." "Do you think Meredith was involved?" Frank asked. "It's unlikely," Celia replied. "She had no signs of planning to abandon her family, unlike Collier, whose marriage was falling apart. Meredith's finances were in perfect order. It's just speculation. The only fact we have is the plane crashed." "Frank, promise me you won't share this. It could jeopardize the investigation and my job," Celia warned. "I understand, and I promise. But why tell me?" Frank asked. "You might hear something that helps. Promise you'll tell me immediately. No Lone Rangers," she urged. "I promise," Frank replied. "Besides, I enjoy our talks." Celia smiled, lighting up the room. Celia said goodbye to Bobby and Lori. Frank noticed Bobby paused his game to say goodnight, a rare gesture. Lori walked Celia to the door, securing a promise to call. Celia kissed Frank on the cheek before leaving. "She likes you, Dad," Lori said. "I like her too," Frank replied, pulling Lori close. That night, Frank lay in bed thinking over what Celia had told him and imagining various scenarios. "Oh, Mary," he thought, "what have you gotten yourself into?" He eventually fell into a restless sleep. A week later, while browsing sports news on his computer, Frank noticed the Facebook icon. On a whim, he clicked it. Frank rarely used Facebook, except to monitor his children's activities. He insisted Bobby and Lori add him as a friend and give him their passwords, hoping to encourage them to be discreet. Logging in, Frank saw mostly uninteresting content, but noticed a friend request from Tom Thomason, a name he didn't recognize. There was no photo, just a silhouette. Clicking on the name, he found the stranger's information was only available to friends. "Hey, Bobby," Frank called out. "Do we know a Tom Thomason?" "No," Bobby replied. "He's been trying to friend me for weeks. I just delete his requests." Lori peeked in. "Yeah, he tried to friend me too. He's just some creep on Facebook." Frank was concerned. An unknown person wanted to contact not only him, but his children too. He reassured them, "You did the right thing. Never respond to strangers online." An idea struck him. "Maybe Celia can help us find out who this Thomason is." He called her, and she answered warmly. "Hi, Frank." "Hi, Celia. Can you come over? Something strange has come up, and I need your help." "Bobby and Lori are fine, right?" she asked, concerned. "They're fine," he assured her. She promised to arrive in 45 minutes. Frank was impressed by her punctuality and neat appearance. "You look great, Celia. You didn't need to dress up for us," he said. "Thank you, Frank. I wanted to," she replied. Frank called the children over, and Bobby quickly logged into their Facebook accounts, showing the friend requests from Tom Thomason. Celia praised Bobby's skills and examined the messages, but found nothing useful. "It's probably a marketing ploy," she told them. "Never share your information with strangers, okay?" The children nodded solemnly, taking her advice seriously. As it got dark, Frank suggested they go out for dinner and invited Celia to join. The kids eagerly insisted, and she agreed. They went to a casual restaurant where Celia engaged the kids in conversation. Frank realized Celia probably knew more about their lives than Meredith had. The lively chat continued during dinner and the drive home, and Celia joined them inside. The kids asked Celia to watch TV with them, but she declined. "I need to talk to your daddy." She led Frank to the living room and turned serious. "I don't think those Facebook requests were a marketing ploy. The Bureau has alerts about identity theft scams, but they don't usually target kids. Someone might be trying to get your family's information." Frank felt a chill. "Who could it be? What do they want?" "I don't know. This doesn't fit any cyber fraud model I've seen," Celia said. "What can we do?" Frank asked. "Close their Facebook accounts. Maybe keep them off the internet." She thought for a moment. "If they're careful and don't communicate with strangers or click on suspicious links, they should be okay. But I have a friend in the federal government who might help. He might not find Tom Thomason, but could trace his location. I'll call on Monday and let you know." With those words, she got up and went to her room to say goodnight to the two children. When she returned, Frank walked her to the door. Before she opened it, he hugged her. "You've been like a guardian angel to us," he said sincerely. "I don't know what we would have done without you." She looked into his eyes for a moment, and then quickly kissed him on the lips. "I don't know if I want to be an angel," she said with a wink. "They don't have much fun." She then turned and walked quickly to her car, leaving Frank standing there bewildered. True to her word, Celia called Frank late Monday morning. "Do you know anyone in Palm Beach, Florida?" she asked. "Not a soul," Frank replied. "Whoever Tom Thomason is, he created his Facebook account with a zip code starting with 334, so he's somewhere in Palm Beach County," she said. "I can't imagine why someone in Palm Beach would try to contact us," Frank said. "But at least he's not nearby. That's reassuring." "I agree," Celia said. "Besides, we've been tracking a lot of scams in South Florida, so maybe this really is some new kind of internet scam. Just make sure Bobby and Lori have nothing to do with these friend requests." "I will, Celia, and thank you. I feel so much better about the whole thing." "I'm so glad I could help, Frank." Despite what he had told Celia, Frank was not reassured at all. On the contrary, he felt like he and his children were under constant attack. First came the terrible news of Meredith's pass away. Then, poor Bobby confessed that his wife had cheated on him. Then he got word that Mary might have been involved in some fraudulent business dealings before her pass away. And now some unknown person was trying to get information about his children. Frank felt like they were under siege, and he decided to fight back. His first priority was to find the enemy in Palm Beach County and confront him. But how could he do that? A quick internet search showed that the county had a population of 1.3 million. Looking for Tom Thomason would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Besides, Frank thought the name could easily be fake. Frank's ordered mind continued to ponder the problem. Then an idea struck him. If I can't find Thomason, maybe I can get him to find me. A plan began to form in his mind. The chances are slim, he admitted, but it's all I've got. The first thing he needed to do was to get Bobby and Lori out of the way. It was almost time for summer vacation, and that gave Frank an idea. He dialed his in-laws' number. "Dad, would you and Mom like Bobby and Lori to come visit for a week? I'll need to go out of town during that time, so you'd be a big help." When the children's grandfather happily agreed and all the issues surrounding their stay were resolved, Frank hung up the phone and immediately called Delta. "I'd like to book a flight to Palm Beach." His children welcomed the news of their upcoming visit to their grandparents, but their enthusiasm waned when they learned that their father would not be traveling with them. It would be the first time they would be separated since their mother's pass away, and the prospect brought back the fear of abandonment they had felt since then. Frank hated to cause the children any distress, but he felt that he must do what he intended, and he succeeded in persuading them. A week before their visit began, Frank started having doubts. "Am I doing the right thing?" he asked himself. But despite the uncertainty, the thought of doing nothing was worse. His inner turmoil was briefly interrupted by a phone call from Celia, who called to inquire how he and his family were doing. After a few minutes of conversation, the tone of her voice changed slightly, and Frank thought she sounded almost shy. "I was wondering if you wanted to get together next week. I haven't seen you and the kids in a while," she said uncertainly. "I'd love to do that, Celia, but I'm taking the kids to their grandparents. We'll be gone all week." "Oh," she said, "I understand. Maybe some other time." "I'd like that very much, Celia," he said earnestly. Frank felt bad about lying to Celia about his plans, but he told himself at least it was partly true. Besides, he was sure he knew what she would say if he revealed his true plans. When Frank returned home and took the children to his relatives in the village, he immediately sat down at the family computer. One of the reasons he asked Meredith's family to take his children was that he knew they didn't have a computer, so he felt safe logging onto Lori's Facebook. Sure enough, a friend request came in from Tom Thomason. Frank clicked on the accept option and quickly received confirmation that Lori was now friends with this stranger. If nothing comes of this, Frank thought, I'll just unfriend him later. Next came the hardest part. Pretending to be a 12-year-old girl, he studied his daughter's previous messages and decided that he could imitate her style quite well. "I may not be able to fool her friends," he admitted to himself, "but I hope I can fool Tom Thomason." He decided that his first communication should lay the foundation and wrote a short note about her visit to the country. Lori, just a little news for her friends, thought Frank. Nothing to arouse the suspicions of the lurkers. The next day he planned to set a trap. "OMG, I'm going to Florida. My best friend Celia offered to take me with her and my dad agreed. Flying out tomorrow, can't wait." Frank decided to call Celia by her first name, thinking that neither Lori's friends nor Tom Thomason knew her. He hoped Celia wouldn't mind. Now that the bait was set, Frank hoped he could attract the fish's attention. "I can't believe I'm in Palm Beach. That's amazing." That evening, Frank posted, "Spent the day at the beach. I'm going to be so tan." The next morning, he posted another note, hoping it would catch on. "I'm going back to the beach tonight. Tomorrow, Celia's taking me shopping on Worth Avenue. We'll have lunch at Taboo's Tukula." As soon as the post appeared on Lori's page, Frank headed to Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Soon he was settled in his seat for the 2-hour flight to Palm Beach. Looking out the window, he remembered visiting Palm Beach once before. He and Mary had driven through town on their way back from their honeymoon in Miami Beach, crossing the Lake Worth Bridge and traveling down Southern Ocean Boulevard, admiring the mansions overlooking the Atlantic. After landing, Frank rented a car and drove to the motel in West Palm Beach where he had booked a room. There was a fast food restaurant across the street, so he grabbed a sandwich and a soda, which he ate in the room while studying a map of the city on his laptop. He hoped he was doing the right thing. After breakfast, he checked Lori's Facebook page but found only a few envious replies from her classmates. He didn't expect Thomason to contact him, but he hoped his fishing expedition might turn up something. Around 10 a.m., he got in his car and drove east over the Royal Park Bridge, turned south, and then east again to Worth Avenue. He wanted to be there early and needed to park on the street so he could get there quickly if necessary. After circling the block where the restaurant was several times, he began to wonder if he had miscalculated. Suddenly, a car pulled out in front of him, and he was able to pull into the parking space. Setting the meter, he walked down the street in front of the restaurant. Noticing a bench in the shade, he gratefully took a seat, put on his baseball cap and sunglasses, and pulled out a copy of the Palm Beach Post, pretending to read while scanning the street. As he sat there, he realized how flimsy his plan was. He had no idea if Tom Thomason had seen the fake posts on Lori's Facebook page or would show up in response. Worse, he had no idea who he was looking for. Unless the mystery man turned out to be John Collier, which Frank doubted, how would he recognize the threat? All he could do was hope to spot a suspicious man and come face to face with him. The street was crowded, and Frank tried to keep track of all the passers-by. The restaurant was starting to fill up, and his stomach rumbled as he watched people coming in. He cursed himself for not bringing a sandwich but didn't dare leave his post. Time stretched slowly, and after a while, he saw the crowd in the restaurant begin to thin. Glancing at his watch, he realized it had been over an hour. What an idiot, he thought. I wouldn't be any worse off if I stayed home and could at least see Celia again. As he watched the shoppers passing by, a woman crossing the street caught his eye. Here I go again, Frank thought, seeing Mary in a crowd of strangers. In fact, the woman looked nothing like Meredith at all. Meredith had shoulder-length brunette hair, while this woman was a blonde with a short haircut and dressed differently from anything Meredith would wear. But there was something eerily familiar about her, and as he continued to watch, Frank realized it was her gait that had triggered his reaction. He impulsively got up and followed her. Glancing down the street, he saw the blonde had reached the corner and was trying to hail a cab. Risking his life, Frank ran across Worth Avenue and jumped into his car. Just as he pulled away from the curb, he saw the woman climb into the back seat of the cab, which raced down the avenue toward the Atlantic before reaching Southern Ocean Boulevard. The cab turned left onto County Road and headed north. Frank followed it for some distance. Finally, he saw the cab turn left onto a suburban street and continue until it almost reached Lake Worth. Frank stopped the car at the curb about a soccer field away and watched as the woman paid the driver and entered an elegant house facing the lake. Frank squinted, trying to get a good look at her. Despite her different hair color and cut, she was the same height and weight as Mary. And as she walked down the path toward the house, Frank was again struck by her gait. Sitting in the car, Frank suddenly remembered a book he had read long ago. In the story, an actor needed a disguise and put pebbles in his shoes to change his walk. "If someone sees me," the actor said, "they'll say, 'Looks like that guy, but it's not him because I'll walk differently.'" It works the other way too, thought Frank. Recalling the book, he became certain he had just seen his deceased wife. Holding back his growing anger, he ran down the street and walked to the door. He rang the doorbell and crossed his arms, waiting. The woman opened the door, looking perplexed. Then she did a double take and shrieked, "Frank, what are you doing here?" "Hello, Mary. Funny to meet you here," he said sarcastically. After a moment's hesitation, she spread her arms to hug him, but he quickly raised his hands to stop her. "Don't touch me," he growled. Then, unable to contain his anger any longer, he shouted, "How could you do this to me? How could you leave Bobby and Lori?" Meredith threw an anxious glance outside, grabbed his arm and dragged him into the house, slamming the door behind her. "I did it all for you, baby. For you and the kids," she urged. "You have to believe me. It was the only way out." "What the hell are you talking about?" demanded Frank hotly. "You're missing the point. None of this makes any sense." "Sit down, little one," she coaxed. "You have to let me explain everything." She was still speaking loudly and rubbed her hands together nervously, sitting down and urging him on. When Frank sat down, an icy calm descended upon him. "Okay, Mary. I'm listening. I was so close to it, baby. I had a coveted big job in my pocket, but then the damn economy tanked. I knew if I could get a little more bang for the buck in the region, the economy would recover and the promotion would be secured." She smiled pleadingly and held out her palms to him. "Once I got this job, we'd be on easy street. No worries about paying for college for the kids. No worries about retirement. No worries ever again." Frank could barely contain himself. "Was it all about money and your position in the company?" Meredith's hands rested on her lap again. "So John and I—" "John Collier?" said Frank grimly. "Yes," she continued, not catching his mood. "You've met him. Anyway, he and I figured out a way to move a few sales from our biggest accounts. We knew they'd show up eventually. We just booked them earlier in the current quarter. Every other region was reporting a significant decrease in sales, and we had a significant increase. The corporation was just thrilled. We earned the biggest bonuses the company has ever paid," she said proudly. Then the smile slid off her face like a cloth falling to the floor. "But the economy was getting worse, not better. And when John told me it would all come out eventually, I knew we had to do something about it. We needed a lot of money to pull this off. So John created a dummy vendor account and started sending fake invoices to IMC. They're so sloppy and wasteful over there, they didn't even notice." "So, you were planning to fake your pass away in a plane crash to cover your tracks?" asked Frank. "That's right, kid," she said, as if Frank was her star pupil. "With enough money, it's not hard to get someone to leave a Zodiac motorboat with a GPS signal in the Caribbean. We just homed in on the signal and landed right next to it." "So this whole thing was just a way to steal a lot of money and abandon the family?" asked Frank bitterly. "No, baby," she protested. "That's not it at all. I knew I'd have to get out of sight for a while, but I made sure you and the kids were okay. I took out life insurance and put everything I could into my 401k so you guys would have plenty of money," she said proudly. "And you thought having enough money would make up for the loss of my wife and the mother of our children?" This time she heard his bitterness. "No, baby, no, you don't understand. I was going to come back for you. As soon as things settled down, I was going to contact you. We could go somewhere safe, baby. We could be together." As she spoke, her eyes continued to dart around the room. Frank looked at her with a stony stare. "You're only missing one thing," he said in an even voice. "What is it, baby?" she asked. You forgot about having fun with John Collier, he said. She was scared at first, but then she stood up and held out her arms to him. No, baby, it wasn't like that. John and I just worked together. We were never more than co-workers. Don't lie to me, Meredith, Frank snapped back. Bobby saw you two together in our bedroom. She sighed. God, did Bobby see us? Oh, that's awful. A sob caught in her throat, but then she came to her senses and straightened up again. It was just one time, baby. He said he wouldn't help me unless I gave myself to him, but it was just one time. I swear. Frank stood up, ignoring her. He looked around. Come out, John, he said loudly. I know you're out here somewhere. Meredith continued to wail. No, baby, it's just me. It was just one time. But no sooner had she continued than John Collier appeared from the bedroom. He was wearing a robe and had his hands in his pockets. Lay off, Mary, he knows, Collier muttered, though he guessed they lived together. Hearing Collier use his wife's favorite name made Frank wince. Meredith began to cry. He must have found us through Facebook, Collier grumbled. I warned you, but you just had to check your two offspring. Then his tone changed to cold and hard. But that doesn't matter now. We need to get out of here. He turned to Frank and pulled an automatic rifle from his robe pocket, pointing it at Frank. As for you, bright boy, you're the only one who knows we're still alive. No, John, no, screamed Meredith, but Collier ignored her. Looks like your kids are going to lose not only their daddy, but their mommy too, he said with a chuckle, raising his weapon at Frank. I wouldn't do that if I were you, came a voice from the hallway. All three turned around in amazement and saw Celia Murray appear, holding a Smith & Wesson automatic at Collier's throat. Before Collier could react, a second voice came from behind him. Drop the weapon, Collier. It's over. Special Agent Harold Barnes emerged from the kitchen, his weapon also pointed at Collier. The former head of the accounting department looked at the two agents hostilely, but then his shoulders slumped. He dropped the weapon to the carpet and slowly raised his hands while Barnes held him at point. Celia quickly moved behind the sullen man, twisted one of his arms behind his back, and snapped handcuffs around his wrist. She then secured the other arm with the second handcuff. After restraining Collier, she did the same with Meredith. As the two lay on the floor, Barnes called the Palm Beach Police Department on his cell phone. A second call went to the local FBI office. Shortly after, the house was crowded with both uniformed and plainclothes police officers. Frank stood back, looking dumbfounded at what was happening. As the fugitives were led away, Frank scrutinized them both. Collier was muttering to himself, and Meredith was crying. Neither looked in Frank's direction. When they left, Celia walked over to Barnes, hugged him, and kissed him on the cheek. Thank you for coming with me, partner. I owe you a great debt of gratitude. The senior agent smiled. No, you don't owe me anything. Solving this case will reflect very well in our personal affairs. When Barnes left, Celia finally looked at Frank. To his amazement, she walked over to him, put her arms around his neck, and sobbed. You big idiot! Don't you ever do that to me again. You could have gotten yourself eliminated. He held her tightly until her crying subsided. Then he pulled her away enough to look into her face. What are you doing here? How did you know where to find me? She smiled through her tears. Lori called me to chat. When she told me you weren't with them at their grandparents' house, I suspected you were going to do something stupid and started making inquiries. When I saw her Facebook posts, I called the airline and found out you had booked a flight to Palm Beach. I talked Harold into coming with me, and we've been following you since early morning. She shook her head. We almost lost you when you took off after that cab, but Harold guessed which way you turned and was right. Frank pulled her even tighter against him. I guess you really are my guardian angel, he said and kissed her. 2 years later, Frank pulled the collar of his coat tighter around his neck. The humidity was high as always, and the wind off Puget Sound was cold and damp. Still, Frank thought, it feels good to be here. The last 2 years had been difficult in many ways. Discovering that his wife was alive was a terrible shock for Frank, but the consequences were even worse for Bobby and Lori. Her trial and conviction on numerous criminal charges only added to the family's pain. During the inevitable media frenzy surrounding the arrest and trial, Frank feared his children wouldn't make it through. The divorce was a mere formality. Legally, Meredith could no longer be dead, but she would spend the next 12 years of her life in Arendelle State Prison. The International Marketing Corporation demanded that Frank return not only Meredith's life insurance policy, but also most of her 401k, since it was funded by unearned bonuses. As the innocent party, Frank may have had a reason to keep some of the funds, but he wanted nothing to do with any part of his ex-wife's money. Instead, He urgently looked for work as his family's savings were nearly depleted. The offer he received from a large aerospace company was coveted, not only because it would provide for his family, but also because it meant moving across the country. There were too many reminders of Meredith in Atlanta, and too many questions from friends and others that he and his children couldn't answer. Finding a new place to live and work seemed like the best solution for all of them. Frank didn't want to leave the state where he and his children were born, but he was ready to embrace the Pacific Northwest and start a new life. They were lucky enough to sell the house in Atlanta and buy a nice, albeit slightly smaller house in Seattle. Meredith had always wanted to live in a luxurious house, and Frank was happy with something cozier. The kids seemed to like it too, and they were already making friends at the new school. He walked in from the deck and looked around for his car keys. Finding them, he poked his head into the kitchen to look for his wife. "Come on, Angel, let's go get our kids." Celia smiled happily at him. I couldn't believe the nonsense Nikki, my 7-year wife, had just thrown my way. In mere moments, I realized how little she truly valued me. We were at a mountain resort for her older sister Kirsten's bachelorette party, which spanned 4 days. This was Kirsten's third marriage, and I couldn't help but ponder how she had managed to wrangle her current fiancé. Was it her wealth, or perhaps some form of coercion? Given her profession as a lawyer, I assumed she had likely coerced him into signing an extensive prenuptial agreement, possibly employing tactics reminiscent of medieval torture. The day prior to Wednesday, we opted to utilize one of the public hot tubs available at the resort. Earlier, Kirsten had jokingly cautioned us about the possibility of encountering undressed men in the hot tubs. I had dismissed it as jest, but it turned out to be true. It appeared that clothing was optional in these baths. As we immersed ourselves in the water, I noticed 5 men across from us in the unclothedness, confirming my earlier suspicion. They nonchalantly exited the tub, dried off, and lounged on their chairs, seemingly unfazed by their exposure. However, one individual, a tall, muscular man with long hair tied back in a ponytail, reclined on the grass beside the hot tub, with one leg raised, drawing attention to his substantial endowment. I observed Nikki gazing at him with a distant look in her eyes. "I suppose I should step back and give you a bit of background about us. My name's Ned Carson, and my wife is Nikki. I'm 39 years old, while she's significantly younger at just 32. Once upon a time, I served as a police officer, but my career came to an abrupt halt when I was shot several times in the line of duty, resulting in health-related dismissal. This was before I crossed paths with Nikki. She was among the physical therapists who aided in my rehabilitation to regain mobility after my injuries. Walking remains a challenge for me, but I managed to get by. Following my departure from the force, I transitioned into private investigation work. Fortunately, much of my tasks involved desk work or surveillance from my car, minimizing the need for physical exertion. I partnered with a seasoned detective until his untimely demise from a heart attack. Assuming his responsibilities, I now report to my former boss's associate. Nikki and I dated, fell in love, and tied the knot. The initial 5 years of our marriage were blissful, or so I believed. However, a couple of years back, I received a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol, exacerbated by my 2-pack-a-day smoking habit. Despite medication, my carnal performance suffered, and attempts to quit smoking only left me irritable. Initially, Nikki appeared understanding, and we made efforts to navigate the challenges. Although my stamina waned, I prioritized her satisfaction. Yet, over time, Nikki underwent a transformation from a caring, affectionate partner to someone I scarcely recognized, bossy and prone to unwarranted outbursts. Nothing I did seemed to appease her anymore. To compound matters, our closeness dwindled over the past year. Despite my efforts to salvage our relationship, it seemed futile. I held on to hope that our getaway to a mountain resort might reignite the flame between us, but it became evident that our situation was beyond repair. As I observed the man openly flaunting himself to Nikki with utter disregard, a sense of familiarity washed over me, yet I couldn't quite place him. Earlier on Thursday, Nikki mentioned going shopping with her sister, so I opted for a round of golf. Returning earlier than expected, I freshened up and dressed, hoping to treat Nikki to dinner and dancing, perhaps leading to closeness later. As I dressed, Nikki entered the room in a bathrobe, her hair damp and her cheeks flushed. Sitting on the bed, she gazed at me for a moment. "I thought you were going shopping with Kirsten," I remarked. "Changed my mind," she replied. "I went to the hot tub instead." "I see," I responded. "Any sightings of undressed men today?" "Oh yes," she said with a grin. "There was this guy with a ponytail named Ramon Torres. He's working at a film studio out west. You'd like him." That's when it clicked. I recognized him instantly. Indeed, Torres works at a film studio, though his work may not grace the big screen. It tends to be rather subpar. "So you've gotten to know this Ramon fellow," I remarked. "A bit," she admitted with a snort. "And some of his buddies." "I see," I said. "Did you have a good time?" "Best I've had in years," she confessed. "Was this your plan all along?" I inquired. Her demeanor shifted, the shrew returning. "Yes, it was," she admitted. For a moment, I didn't recognize the woman before me. She met my gaze before continuing. "You have no idea. For years you were the only carnal partner I had. But the past 2 years have been pure torment. I crave closeness, yet you can't perform half the time." "Do you know why?" she challenged. "It's those damn medications the doctor prescribed," I retorted. "It's not my fault." "Of course it's your fault," she fired back. "Years of smoking, drinking, junk food, and neglecting exercise. Now you're paying the price, and so am I. I need a real man, someone well-endowed, someone who doesn't bend to my every whim. I need someone who takes charge, not someone who sits behind a desk and avoids confrontation." I felt as though I'd been sucker punched. I couldn't wrap my head around what she was confessing. I shook my head in disbelief, questioning if this nightmare was real, but she wasn't finished. "Do you know what he did?" she asked, a smirk playing on her lips. "He ordered me to strip right there in front of everyone." "And you complied?" I inquired, already anticipating the answer. "Of course I did," she replied, shedding her robe to reveal her undressedness. "And did you have physical involvement with them too?" I asked, though I already suspected the truth. She chuckled as she revealed. "Have physical involvement? No, I had lovemaking with them, all of them, even engaged in a trio activity. And yes, I let them all have their way with me. And you know what else?" "What?" I responded quietly, trying to contain my fury. "They're on their way here now, ready to ravage me in this bed while you watch," she declared. I rose from the bed and retrieved my suitcase from the closet. "What are you doing?" she queried. "Running away like a coward?" I took a deep breath and counted to 10 before replying. I remembered what it was about Ramon that drove me insane. He had a vile tendency of ensnaring women with lovemaking and medications, then coercing them into adult films. Once done, he'd cast them aside, leaving them to fend for themselves as fallen women. The authorities tried to stop him numerous times to no avail. "If you were wise, you'd flee too," I advised. "But wisdom isn't your strong suit, is it? Have your fun if you wish, but it's over between us. Give my regards to your sister." With my suitcase packed, I made my way to the door. "You're just going to leave me?" she taunted, a smirk on her face. "Yes, I'm leaving," I declared. "I'm tired of your antics, and I refuse to be your compliant, betrayed man. Farewell." With those final words, I exited the room. Walking down the hallway, I spotted Ramon and his entourage strolling in my direction. Once they passed, I called out to him. "Ramon!" I shouted. He turned, meeting my gaze. "What's up?" he inquired. Removing my wedding ring, I tossed it to him. "She's all yours if you want her," I stated as he caught it. "I'm finished with her." He smirked, slipping the ring into his pocket. "Whatever you say, man," he replied, chuckling before sauntering off. Heading to my car, I loaded up and drove away, stopping to grab a pack of cigarettes and a 6-pack of beer. At that moment, I was indifferent to my fate, opting to drown my sorrows or break something. 3 hours later, I arrived home, half expecting a call or apology from Nikki, but none came. Forget it, I thought to myself. With plenty of time left in the day, I took matters into my own hands. If Nikki believed she could indulge in her escapade and return home as if nothing happened, she was sorely mistaken. I called a locksmith and arranged for all the locks to be changed promptly, willing to pay extra for swift service. Grabbing a beer, I sat on the back porch with a notepad, jotting down tasks to tackle. Having dealt with enough cases involving infidelity, I knew the routine. Typically, the husband got the short end of the stick while the wife walked away with half. Aware that I couldn't file for divorce on grounds of infidelity due to no-fault regulations, I made note of it. After drafting my plan, I indulged in a few more beers and cigarettes before retiring to bed, hoping to awaken from this dreadful nightmare. However, that scenario didn't unfold. The following morning, I rose and checked my phone, desperately hoping for a change of heart from Nikki. But it never came. No calls, no texts. Complete silence. I sipped my coffee and phoned Nick Parsons, a prominent lawyer we both knew well. After recounting the situation, he assured me he'd draft divorce papers. We agreed to serve Nikki at her workplace on Monday for maximum impact. "You know the drill, Ned," Nick cautioned. "Don't do anything reckless." "You've got me," I assured him. "I mean it," he reiterated. "Speak to your boss about arranging someone to watch over your wife. And Ned, I don't want you involved in this mess. Stay clear as much as possible." "Understood," I acknowledged. After our conversation, I rang my boss, Paul Drake. "Hey, Ned, thought you and your wife were off in the mountains," he remarked. "What's up? Everything okay?" "Not really, Paul," I confessed. He listened as I shared my tale. "Damn," he muttered once I finished. "That's rough. Want me to send someone to keep tabs?" "Yeah, that'd help," I agreed. But it had to be someone unfamiliar to Nikki. "I've got it handled," Paul assured me. "I've dealt with situations like this. Follow Nick's advice and stay out of trouble. I'll dispatch someone pronto." "Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it," I expressed before ending the call. I proceeded to the bank to handle our accounts, splitting them and canceling Nikki's credit card. While I considered canceling her ATM card, I opted to keep it active to monitor any charges she might make, but I reduced the daily withdrawal limit. Once done, I visited another bank to open an account solely in my name. I stopped at a diner for a pastrami sandwich before heading home, realizing there was nothing more I could do but wait. Eventually, I felt it was time to take stock of myself. I needed to take action. Stepping on the bathroom scale, I noted my weight, 98 kilograms. Examining myself in the mirror, I saw remnants of my former physique, but some fat had accumulated and my once-toned muscles had softened. No wonder Nikki had lost interest in closeness, I mused. Frankly, I wouldn't be eager for closeness either in my current state. I recalled the doctor's advice about managing my diabetes by maintaining a weight below 200 pounds. Despite initially disregarding his nutrition guide, I now reconsidered. Perhaps in a way, Nikki was correct. I had allowed myself to deteriorate. However, she didn't need to resort to her actions. If she truly loved me, I reasoned, she would have communicated her concerns earlier. Determined to enact change, I resolved to overhaul everything right then and there. Grabbing the phone book and a pack of cigarettes, I headed out to the back porch to search for nearby gyms. After finding a couple, I planned to check them out. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang. Seeing an unfamiliar number, I answered anyway. "Carson," I greeted. A female voice on the other end spoke up. "Ned, where are you?" she inquired. I recognized Kirsten's voice, though we hadn't spoken much before, so I was surprised by her call. "Yes, I left last night," I confirmed. "Why do you ask?" "We were just wondering what happened," she explained. "Nikki seemed really upset and retreated to soak. I've never seen her like this." She went on to mention that there was a fight between us, and I left. "What's going on?" she inquired. "Maybe you should ask her," I suggested. "Is everything okay between you two?" she pressed. "No, that's not the case," I responded. "Did you know Ramon Torres and his team are at the resort?" "Yes, they're providing entertainment for our bachelorette party," she confirmed. "I also arranged for them to bring a film crew." "Why?" I probed. "Just curious," I evaded. "Did Nikki know?" I asked. "Yes, I told her," Kirsten replied. "To be honest, I was surprised when you showed up. It was supposed to be a girls' thing. But if you're both into that lifestyle, then it's none of my business." "So you knew she planned to do that with me?" I clarified. "Yes, we all knew," she admitted. "Why do you ask? Is there a problem?" "Nothing I can't handle," I assured, keeping my cards close. "Do you want me to tell Nikki to call you?" Kirsten offered. "No need," I declined. "Just let her enjoy herself, okay?" Kirsten advised. "She still loves you. When she's done, she'll come back to you. It's just lovemaking." "No, it's more than that," I disagreed. "It's a heartless, calculated betrayal, and you facilitated it." "Please calm down," Kirsten dismissed. "It's just a weekend. You'll pick her up on Sunday, right?" "No," I stated firmly. "She can find her own way back, but she's not welcome here." I heard Kirsten gasp, but I brushed it off. "Goodbye, Kirsten," I concluded, ending the call. Frustrated and angry, I contemplated punching a wall, but instead went to the gym, channeling my rage into the punching bag until my arms grew weak, then took a shower. "Are you all right?" a man inquired as I was dressing. I glanced up to see one of the trainers standing nearby. "Not really, but thanks for asking," I replied. "I noticed you on that punching bag," he remarked. "I was concerned you might hurt yourself. Do you want to talk about it?" "What the heck?" I pondered. Taking a seat, I took a deep breath. He joined me on the bench, patiently waiting. Eventually, I divulged the entire story. "I'm sorry to hear that," he sympathized. "Please call me Ned," I requested. "Okay, Ned," he responded. "Listen, if you're looking to get back in shape, I can assist you. But I think you need more than just weight loss. I can recommend a good counselor if you're interested." Reflecting for a moment, I realized he was correct. I was a wreck, both physically and emotionally. "What the heck?" I agreed. "Looks like I could use all the help I can get." He chuckled, handing me a business card. "Rose Carlson, counselor," it read. "Give her a call," he suggested. "She's excellent, especially in situations like yours." "Yes, I'll do that," I affirmed. "By the way, I couldn't help but notice you avoid putting weight on your right leg," he pointed out. I explained about my injury from the shooting. He listened attentively, nodding in understanding. "I can assist you with that if you're interested," he offered. "We can also guide you with your diet and exercise routine, particularly tailored for individuals with diabetes. Are you ready to commit to this?" After pondering, I responded. "Absolutely," I affirmed with a nod. I knew I needed to take action, and quickly. "All right," he agreed. "Let's get you signed up. By the way, I'm John Green." He offered his hand, and I shook it. "Ned," I introduced myself. "Ned Carson." "Carson," he repeated. I recognized that name. Wait a minute. You're the cop who saved my grandmother during a bank robbery, right? This was about 8 years ago? I was shot during that robbery. It's great to finally meet you. How's your grandmother?" I inquired. "She's doing well," John confirmed. "Thank you for asking." Guiding me to the front desk, John enrolled me in a program designed to help me shed weight and regain strength. He introduced me to his colleagues, highlighting my heroic past, and they expressed gratitude for my service. "If you have any questions, feel free to ask," John offered as we concluded, "and be sure to get in touch with Rose." "I will," I promised. "Thanks for everything, John." Exiting the gym, I felt a sense of upliftment I hadn't experienced in a while. It was refreshing to receive appreciation from someone. Upon returning home, I scheduled an appointment with Rose for the following Tuesday, though I held on to a sliver of hope for contact from Nikki. None came. However, Paul reached out to inform me they had an operative observing Nikki and would update me accordingly. "Thanks," I acknowledged, relaying my plans to meet with Rose. "All right," Paul replied. "It's good to see you taking positive steps, Ned. Take your time sorting things out. I'll keep you posted on our observations from the resort. Just try to stay calm, all right?" "I gotcha," I assured him. Wrapping up our conversation, I attempted to unwind, but relaxation proved elusive. A part of me yearned to drown my sorrows in drinks. Yet my rational side intervened. Throughout the weekend, I anxiously awaited news but heard nothing until Sunday. Around 10:01 a.m., Paul reached out, informing me that Nikki had departed with Ramon and his team earlier that morning. "Looks like she had a packed weekend," he remarked, detailing the array of evidence they had gathered. "I'll pass all this on to Nick and provide you a copy if you're interested. Any idea where they went?" I queried. "Not a clue," Paul admitted. "They left around 9 a.m.? "Got it," I acknowledged. "Assuming she returns, she should be back around noon." Paul agreed. "That's the plan. Keep me posted if she turns up," he urged. "Will do," I affirmed, concluding our exchange. "I'll do that," I assured him before wrapping up our conversation. Taking a leap of faith, I dialed Nikki's number, but it went straight to voicemail. "Nikki, call me back when you can," I left a message. "I know you left the resort. Call me." Ending the call, I dialed Kirsten's number, and she picked up after the third ring. "Hey, Ned," she greeted me. "You missed quite the party." "Yeah, I gathered," I replied. "Looks like Nikki took off with Ramona." "Yeah, they left early today," she confirmed. "Any idea where they're headed?" I inquired. "No clue," she admitted. "I figured they might be heading your way, but I can't say for sure. Do you even care if she comes back?" "Hey, don't take it out on me," she snapped. "Nikki's an adult. She can do what she wants. If she decides not to come back, that's not on me. Now leave me alone." With those words, she concluded our conversation. I stashed my phone in my pocket and settled into the living room, waiting. It's remarkable how time seems to drag when you're watching the clock. The minutes crept by slowly. Soon it was noon, and Nikki was still nowhere to be seen. I waited anxiously, but there was no sign of her. Another hour passed with no word from Nikki, and my voicemail remained unanswered. I tried using a search app on my phone to locate her, but it was fruitless. It appeared she had powered off her phone and removed the battery, making tracking impossible. Switching to my computer, I checked my email, but there was nothing. I continued to wait, growing increasingly restless. By 6 p.m., there was still no sign of Nikki. I began to worry that she hadn't made it home, or worse, had been in an accident. Along the way, I reached out to Paul, who made inquiries, only to discover that she hadn't been admitted to any hospital and hadn't encountered law enforcement as far as he knew. On my way, an idea struck me, prompting me to return to my computer. I reasoned that if she used her card at the ATM, the transaction would show up in our account. Upon accessing the online banking portal, I noticed a charge of $200 made around 9:45 a.m. at the airport, conveniently located near the resort. This amount matched the daily limit I had set on her card on Friday. With this information, I speculated that she had chosen to fly off with Ramon and his entourage. But to where? Opening another browser window, I searched for flights departing from that airport and found options to Los Angeles, Playa, Miami, San Francisco, Dallas, and Seattle around 11. Knowing Ramon resided on the West Coast, I surmised that might be her destination. Yet, certainty awaited her next card usage. I briefed Paul on the latest developments. "We'll need to wait for her next card usage," he reasoned. "That may not occur until tomorrow at the earliest," I replied, "and by then she could be anywhere." "Have you considered reporting her missing?" he inquired. "The police typically require a 24-hour absence before acting," I informed him. "Then waiting seems to be our only option," he concluded. "Is there any clue in the video transcripts about her intended destination?" I probed. "It's possible. We might need to comb through it meticulously," he suggested. "Are you up for the task?" "I must do something," I affirmed. "There has to be a clue about her whereabouts." "All right, come over to my place and we can delve into this further," he offered. "But I must warn you, the footage isn't pleasant." "I don't care," I asserted. "I need to unravel this mystery and determine if she'll ever return." "Then come," he urged. We concluded our conversation, and I drove to Paul's house within the bounds of the law. Upon arrival, his wife Donna greeted me at the door. "Can I offer you a drink, Ned? Coffee, perhaps, or would you prefer a beer?" she inquired. "I need to gather my thoughts," I replied. "Coffee would be perfect, thank you." "All right," she acknowledged. "Paul's in his office, so head straight there." Making my way to Paul's home office, I observed him poring over a thick stack of papers. He glanced up as I entered. "Come in, Ned," he welcomed. "Take these and see what you can uncover." Handing me the papers, I settled in to examine them. As expected, the contents were far from pleasant. Mostly it consisted of Nikki pleading for more intense and rapid physical involvement, accompanied by crude remarks from Ramon and his associates about her attributes. Much of it was repulsive and immature, in my opinion. I couldn't ignore the obligatory insults directed at me from Nikki and her paramours. "It's a shame your sorry husband was too spineless to stick around," Ramon remarked. "Yeah, well, he's missing out," Nikki retorted. "He'll never lay a hand on me again." "He handed me his ring when he left," Ramon informed her. "Said you're all mine now and it's over with him." Laughter ensued. "Maybe I'll urinate on him for old time's sake," she joked. More laughter. In that moment, I questioned what I ever saw in her. Good riddance to bad rubbish, I mused. We continued to sift through the transcripts, searching for any clue. Suddenly, Paul exclaimed, "Hold on," he interjected. "I think I've found something." "What is it?" I inquired. "It was late Saturday night, around 11:45 p.m., he explained. "Here, read this. Let me know your thoughts." Accepting the transcript, I began reading a few lines prior to the indicated point to grasp the context more fully. "Man, boss, she's the best we've had in a long time," remarked one of Ramon's accomplices. "We could rake in a ton of cash with this chick's assets." "You really think so?" inquired Ramon. "Oh, absolutely," chimed in the other henchman. "What do you say?" Ramon asked. "Ready to make some serious dough?" "I'm not some damn floozy," Nikki retorted. Laughter ensued. "No, sweetheart, I'm talking about movies. Online videos," clarified Ramon. "With your incredible body and pretty face, all you need to do is what you're doing now, but in front of the camera. It's natural for you. I've been brainstorming a whole new series of betrayed man's movie and humiliation videos, and you'd be perfect for it." "Yes. When can I start?" she inquired. "We could head out right after the party if you're up for it," suggested Ramon. "I'll set you up with a nice place in Los Angeles, and you'll work exclusively for me. Of course, I'll take a cut, but you could make a fortune with enough videos." "Can I get some more of that stuff you gave me earlier?" she asked. "And a bit of that euphoria pills?" "Whatever you desire, babe," he assured her. "So I get all the lovemaking I want and get paid?" she questioned. And I get to humiliate losers like Ned? That's the idea, confirmed Ramon. You can count me in, she affirmed. What about your pathetic husband? Inquired one of the accomplices. Are you going to spill the beans to him? Screw him. He's ancient history, she declared. He'll never lay eyes on me again. When do we leave? First thing tomorrow, stated Ramon. We'll depart at 9 in the morning, hit the airport, and head west. Hell yeah, she exclaimed. Let's do it. I handed the transcript back to Paul. Do we have this on video? I queried. Yep, let me just grab the disc and fire it up, he replied. Inserting a disc into his computer, he played the video, skipping to the timestamp indicated in the transcript. He glanced at me before hitting play. Ready for this? He inquired. Let's just get it done, I replied. He pressed play on the video, and I observed the scene unfolding through Nikki's room window. She lay undressed on the bed, accompanied by Ramon and his associates, one of whom wielded a camera. A tray with multiple white powder shots sat nearby, evident from Nikki's behavior. I scanned for any other figures but found none, though I wouldn't be surprised if Kirsten was involved. We watched the video while following along with the transcript. After their conversation, they engaged in group lovemaking again. That's enough, I muttered in disgust. Turn it off. Paul shut down the video and glanced at me. Well, he prompted. She's clearly participating willingly, even under the influence of white powder and who knows what else, I explained. So there's no basis for a kidnapping charge, and I didn't spot Kirsten in the video, so it's unlikely she's aware. Even if she knew, she wouldn't speak up. However, we should still make an earnest attempt to locate her for notification purposes. Do you have any contacts in Los Angeles? Paul asked. You know I have connections everywhere, I reassured him. I'll make some calls and see what I can find. Once you locate her, inform me, I requested. I want to deliver the documents personally. Absolutely not, Ned, Paul objected. That's not happening. I know you're in a lot of pain, but you shouldn't involve yourself any further. I know you well. You might do something rash, and I'd have to bail you out of jail. Stay put. Let Nick and me handle this. I'll revoke your license if you even consider leaving. Understand? Understood, I conceded, raising my hands. I'll behave, I promise. You better, Paul warned. I'll make some calls and update Nick. Don't worry, I'll keep you informed. Now go home, relax, and take a few days off. In fact, consider yourself on vacation effective immediately. I can't do that, Paul, I objected. I have a business to run. Everything's under control. Consider it an order. Are you on vacation starting now? He reiterated. Okay, I acquiesced. I'm on vacation. I'll behave and head home. We shook hands and I left, thanking Donna for the coffee. I briefly considered grabbing a beer but opted to drive home instead. It turned out to be a good decision, as the house phone rang just as I stepped into the living room. Hello? I answered when I picked up the receiver. Seeing Kirsten's number on the caller ID, I activated the recording feature on my answering machine. Hi, Ned, it's Kirsten, she greeted. Yes, I recognize the number, I responded, and I should let you know I'm recording this conversation. I hope that's all right. Of course, she replied. If I were in your shoes, I'd probably do the same. So, what's on your mind, Kirsten? I inquired. I just heard from Nikki, she revealed. She asked me to represent her interests in case you decide to file for divorce. Do you know where she is? I probed. She mentioned she's in Miami now, but she plans to move around a lot and may not return soon, Kirsten disclosed. In Miami, huh? I remarked. I suspected she was either lying or being misled. I see, she confirmed. That's what she told me. She also mentioned that you're likely considering divorce, I stated. That's correct. Divorce proceedings are underway, I confirmed. Once they're prepared, send them my way, she instructed. I'll email you my address. I'll relay the message, I assured her. Were you aware of her intention to leave me and pursue a career in adult films with Ramon Torres? I questioned. No, Ned, I had no idea, she admitted. I understand you may not think highly of me, but I'm being sincere. I thought she was merely using her involvement with him to provoke a reaction from you. I didn't realize she intended to leave. It was quite a shock when she told me. I know you're fundamentally a good person, Ned, so please accept my apologies. Did you know about the medications he administered to her? I pressed. White powder and euphoria pills, she replied. I knew about euphoria pills, but not white powder, she added. We all took some euphoria pills that night, but I didn't see any white powder. You know what he does with the girls he recruits, right? I questioned. He makes adult films, she clarified. He specializes in group videos and humiliation. He decided to start a new series featuring more mature amateur women like Nikki. But I didn't know he had his eye on her. You didn't answer my question, I reminded her. Do you know what he does with them? I don't understand you, she responded. Don't play dumb, Kirsten, I insisted. He exploits them, drains them. Then he casts them out onto the streets where they're forced to do anything for their next fix. Is this what awaits your sister? How long do you think she'll last? Is this a concern for you? She asked. Oh, please, I retorted sarcastically. No matter how much I despise her now, I wouldn't wish this fate on anyone, not even you. Where's your concern for your sister? It's none of your business, but I'll take her in before I let this happen to her, she stated. Make sure she knows that, I insisted. From what I know about him, he'll probably discard her within 5 years, maybe less. I hope you have a spare room ready. You don't have to worry about the size of my place, she assured. All I need to know is what you want in the divorce. You'll find out soon enough, I informed her. Very well, she acknowledged. Do you want me to relay a message to Nikki? She offered. No, I declined. I have nothing to say to her at the moment. Well, then, I suppose we have nothing further to discuss. Ned, once again, I'm sorry this happened. Instruct your lawyer to send the documents directly to me. Any communication will be through me, she concluded. Goodbye, Ned. After ending the conversation and stopping the recording, I called Nick and briefed him on Kirsten's statements. Representing her own sister's interests right after enabling her actions, he remarked. Isn't this unethical? I inquired. No, not necessarily, Nick responded. But it certainly doesn't look good. We'll send Kirsten a copy of the documents, but I want to see if we can locate your wife and inform her in person. There's too much risk that Kirsten won't deliver the documents to her sister and then claim she wasn't properly notified. Do you think she would really do that? I inquired. Oh yeah, Nick confirmed. You'd be surprised at some of the things I've seen her do. I'll speak with Paul and see if we can locate Nikki. If not, we'll resort to what's known as divorce by publication. What does that entail? I asked. Well, when a spouse absconds and can't be located, we can pay to publish the divorce notice in a newspaper, where she's likely to come across it at least once a week for 4 weeks, he explained. If she's indeed in the Los Angeles area, as we suspect, we'll publish it both locally and in the LA Times. And of course, we'll still send a copy of the documents to Kirsten, right? I clarified. Absolutely. Sending it to Kirsten doesn't guarantee Nikki's notification, Nick affirmed. We continued our conversation before eventually ending the call. I grabbed a snack, smoked a cigarette, and retired to bed. Over the ensuing weeks, we monitored Nikki's ATM activity and deduced that she was likely situated in the Long Beach, California vicinity. Paul reached out to his contact in Los Angeles and discovered that investigators had spotted her at various nightclubs, where she had been performing on stage, though pinpointing her exact whereabouts remained elusive. Pat Silva, Nikki's supervisor at the therapy clinic where she worked, rang up to inquire about her absence. Upon learning that Nikki had decided on a career change, I calmly informed her of the situation. What do you mean, career change? Pat queried. Haven't you heard? I responded. She's chosen to pursue a career in adult filmmaking. What? Pat exclaimed. Yes, she aspires to be an adult film star and a medication user, I stated. She's somewhere in Southern California pursuing her dream as we speak. I'm surprised she didn't inform you, Ned. You better not be joking, Pat cautioned. I'm afraid it's true, I confirmed. So she won't be returning, right? Pat sought reassurance. I'd be very surprised if she did, I admitted. Okay, I'll process her final payment and terminate her employment, Pat decided. Where should I send it? For now, you can mail it to me, I replied. I'll pass it on to her lawyer. All right, Ned, Pat said. I'm sorry to hear about this. She'll be missed. Thank you, Pat, I acknowledged, concluding our conversation. I received Nikki's last paycheck and forwarded it to Kirsten as pledged. Whether she relayed it to Nikki, I couldn't say, nor did I particularly care. I commenced my sessions with Dr. Rose, who proved to be an excellent therapist, attentive and understanding. Initially fearing I might face blame for Nikki's actions, I was relieved to find Dr. Rose didn't attribute fault to me. By the end of the first month, I began to feel noticeably better. Regular visits to the gym also contributed to my well-being. Shedding a few pounds, I adopted a sustainable diet with John's assistance. Before long, I started to catch glimpses of my former self in the mirror. Nick was also occupied. After crafting a notably biased divorce petition, he ran it in the local newspaper and the LA Times twice weekly for 4 weeks. As the 4th week neared its close, he graciously sent Kirsten a copy, which left her dissatisfied. She demanded an urgent meeting with me and Nick in his conference room. What does all this mean? She demanded upon our gathering. This is an affront, not a divorce request. What's the aim behind demanding a 75-25 split with no alimony? The true affront is what your client did to her husband. With your assistance, I might add, given her decision to abandon the marriage. My client and I believe this is the appropriate course of action, Nick asserted. She didn't even bother to remove her belongings from my client's home. He hasn't even been served the papers yet, Kirsten seethed. That's because your client was evading in the Los Angeles area, Nick explained. Since we lacked her address and you weren't forthcoming about her whereabouts, we resorted to filing for divorce by publication. A fourth notice has just been published in both local and LA Times. I'll contest this, you'll see, she threatened. As you wish, Nick replied, and contest she did. She filed motions that went nowhere and requested counseling, which the judge reluctantly sanctioned. I was taken aback when Nick informed me of this. Don't fret, he reassured. Judge Potter despises traitors and favors law enforcement. Kirsten thinks she's in control, but in reality, she's giving Nikki just enough rope to hang herself. What do you mean? I inquired. Nikki likely won't show up for the counseling, he predicted. Judge Potter detests disobedience to his orders. In such cases, he's likely to issue a bench warrant for her arrest. That's what I hope for, I expressed. I arrived punctually at the counselor's office designated by the court, but predictably, Nikki was a no-show. I knew the counselor, Judy McGregor, from her previous work with me after I was shot. We spent an hour catching up, during which I recounted my story. I gather you can't fathom reconciling with your wife? She deduced. Not at all, I affirmed. All right, she acknowledged. I'll report this to the judge along with her absence. Best of luck, Ned. It was good to see you again. According to Nick's later account, Judge Potter was incensed by Nikki's disregard for his orders and issued a bench warrant for her arrest. He informed me the warrant remained valid for 5 years. We continued to monitor her ATM usage and observed that while most of her transactions occurred in the Long Beach area, she also made multiple withdrawals in San Francisco and San Diego during the same period. It appears she was quite active simultaneously. I conducted a search and found several brief videos featuring her. I could only endure watching them for a few minutes and noticed they all involved the same group, scenes of carnal activity and humiliation purportedly targeting a husband. I felt nauseated realizing that this was likely what she wanted to subject me to. Finally, a court date for our hearing was scheduled. I met Nick at the courthouse and we entered together. Scanning the room, I spotted Kirsten, but Nikki was nowhere to be found. When our turn came to approach the bench, Nick and I took our seats and observed Kirsten sitting alone at her table. Judge Potter expressed his dissatisfaction at seeing her unaccompanied. "And where is your client?" he inquired. "She's not feeling well at the moment," Kirsten responded. "Unwell?" questioned Judge Potter. "What does that mean? She's currently working," Kirsten added. "Working?" the judge repeated. "She's an adult film actress, for heaven's sake. Are there no breaks in her schedule? Is her job more important than this divorce? She simply couldn't make it, Your Honor," Kirsten argued. Judge Potter sighed heavily and glanced at the documents before him. "Very well," he conceded. "Considering this, I will issue another court order, and I am prepared to finalize the divorce decree in court today." "But, Your Honor, we still need to file motions," Kirsten interjected. "I've seen all I need to see, counsel," the judge retorted, clearly irritated. He paused, then continued after surveying both parties. "While there are guidelines governing court awards, it's important to note that in this state, the bench possesses significant discretion in determining marital property division," he explained. "Upon reflecting on this case, I acknowledge the merits of both sides. On one hand, there's a highly decorated former police officer who risked his life protecting a 70-year-old grandmother. On the other hand, there's a woman whose attorney concedes she's a medication-abusing adult film actress who deliberately betrayed and deserted her husband to pursue her depraved lifestyle. And it's my understanding, counsel, that you played a role in facilitating some of your client's actions. I must admit, this is deeply troubling." I reached out to the state bar, and they confirmed no ethical breaches occurred. "However, though you came close to crossing the line, I advise caution in the future," he stated, banging his gavel. "After reviewing all the documents in the attorney's report, I find myself compelled to grant the plaintiff's divorce petition as submitted," he continued. "Best of luck, Mr. Carson, and thank you for your service to the community," he concluded. I glanced at Nick, surprised. "Did we just win?" I queried. He grinned, extending his hand. "Absolutely, Ned. Congratulations. You're now a free man," he affirmed, shaking my hand. Kirsten gathered her belongings and approached us. "Congratulations, Ned," she offered, shaking my hand. "You've exacted your revenge. I hope you find solace in that." I reciprocated the handshake, understanding that losing such a case would be difficult for her. No, I'm not content, I confessed. Happiness has eluded me for quite some time. I retrieved a DVD from my briefcase and handed it to her. You once mentioned that if I needed to convey a message to Nikki, I should inform you. Here's my final message to her. Feel free to view it. I'm indifferent. Additionally, I have a cashier's check for her share of our account. I closed it late last night. I'll make sure she receives it, I murmured. By the way, what's on the DVD? She inquired. Nothing extraordinary, I replied. Just a brief message for her. In reality, it was more than a mere message. The previous day, I dragged a 50-gallon drum to the backyard and set up the camera on a tripod. While it recorded, I filled the barrel with all her abandoned belongings, including her $2,500 wedding gown, every photograph I possessed of her, and various trinkets she had collected over the years. I even shattered the wedding portrait hanging above our bedroom and stuffed it into the drum. I poured lighter fluid over everything in the drum and ignited it. As it burned, I addressed the camera. Nikki, I began, there was a time when I would have taken a bullet for you. Throughout our time together, I loved you wholeheartedly, and I envisioned growing old by your side. Sadly, you had different plans, so that future won't materialize. I've seen glimpses of your work online, and I can't shake the feeling that this is what you intended for me. But that won't happen either. Don't inquire about friendship, as friends don't inflict the pain you did. And don't expect forgiveness from me, for it won't come. I only hope you wake up to reality before it's too late. Farewell, Nikki, I concluded before departing, leaving the camera to capture the final destruction of her remaining possessions in the house. Life moved forward after Nikki. I revamped the house, removing anything even remotely associated with my ex-wife. I continued sessions with Rose and maintained my thrice-weekly gym routine, adhering to our diet plan and discarding my cigarettes. A couple of months later, I stepped on the scale and found I was down to 84 pounds. There was still work to do, but I felt better than I had in ages. The only thing missing was the companionship I once shared with Nikki, and then fate intervened. While shopping for groceries at the local market, I accidentally collided with her. It was a genuine mistake. I wasn't paying attention. After profusely apologizing, I was met with the most enchanting smile. I was momentarily captivated, forgetting to breathe for a moment. Introducing myself, I noticed the absence of any rings on her fingers. Accepting my apology, she introduced herself as Brenda Wilkins. We struck up a conversation, and to my surprise, I mustered the courage to invite her to dinner. Even more surprising was her acceptance. As fate would have it, Brenda was a widowed physician. Her husband and young son had tragically perished in a car accident several years prior, on their way back from a father-son camping trip. Offering my condolences, I shared with her the story of my divorce from Nikki. Amidst our conversation, I mentioned my diabetes and the effects of my medications. Understandingly, she nodded. I've dealt with similar cases before, she remarked. Why don't you bring your medications to my office and let's explore what options we have? Making an appointment, I brought along all my prescriptions. Brenda was taken aback by the sight of them. After conducting some tests, she proposed a few adjustments, and I noticed an immediate improvement. She emphasized the importance of diet, exercise, and quitting smoking, which significantly contributed to my progress. The first time we shared a bed, I felt like a changed man. It was the first time in over 2 years that I felt content. Waking up to Brenda's beautiful face the next morning, I realized I couldn't let go of this newfound happiness. Upon proposing, she showered me with kisses. Following our marriage, we sold our respective homes, combined our finances, and purchased a new residence in a freshly developed area. We both agreed that starting afresh was essential to leave the past behind. A little over a year into our marriage, Brenda gave birth to twins, a boy named Christopher and a girl named Julie. Life carried on for the Carson family, and I discovered the profound joy of fatherhood. About a decade after our marriage, there came a knock at our door. Opening it, I found Kirsten standing there, looking worn out. "Ned, good to see you again," she greeted. "Likewise, Kirsten," I responded, inviting her inside. After settling in, I introduced her to Brenda and the kids. "What brings you here?" I inquired. "This is about Nikki," she revealed. "You were right about Ramon." "About what?" I probed, curious. "It took some time, but he eventually exploited her just as you predicted," she explained. "She confessed to us that she ended up on the streets performing tricks to support her medication habit. Sadly, women like her don't last long in that environment. She managed on her own for a while, but eventually became destitute. Recently, she was discovered unconscious in an alley and taken to a rehab center. I learned of this a few months ago and arranged for her to come here. She's battling cancer, and her prognosis is grim." You once vowed not to let her reach this point, I remarked. What happened? We lost contact about 6 years ago, she admitted. The authorities in Los Angeles reached out to me and I flew out to see her. She's not doing well. I'm sorry to hear that, I expressed. What do you need from me? Kirsten inquired further. She wants closure, Kirsten elaborated, referring to Nikki. She wishes to see you one last time. I understand your feelings toward her and me, but I implore you to find the compassion to grant her this final wish. It was an unexpected request. Kirsten was asking for a favor. Glancing at Brenda, I saw the concern mirrored in her expression. What do you think? I asked her. Kirsten is right, dear, she affirmed. She needs closure. And deep down, you know it too. How severe is her cancer? Brenda asked Kirsten. It's dire, Kirsten responded. The cancer has spread extensively throughout her body. The doctors mentioned that if they had detected it earlier, they might have had a chance. But now it's too advanced. They've given her a prognosis of a few months, or possibly just hours. All right, I acknowledged. I'll go see her. I'll accompany you, Brenda offered. I agreed and contacted a babysitter. Fortunately, Carla, our neighbor's teenager, was available. Once Carla arrived, Brenda and I followed Kirsten to the hospice. Upon reaching the hospice, Kirsten led us to Nikki's room. I was taken aback upon entering. She was unrecognizable. Tubes protruded from her frail body, and her once beautiful face appeared sallow and discolored. It seemed as though all her former radiance had vanished. As I stood by her bedside, she opened her eyes. Ned, she whispered, a tear trickling down her cheek. Is it really you? You look so good. Yes, Nikki, it's me, I confirmed. Oh, Ned, I'm so sorry, she choked out between sobs. I messed up so badly, ruined everything. I know you said you'd never forgive me, but please, I'm begging you. It hurts so much. Please forgive me. Glancing at Brenda, I saw tears welling in her eyes. I knew what I needed to do, though it would be incredibly difficult. Taking a seat, I clasped her hand. It felt cold. It's all right, Nikki, I reassured her. I forgive you. She burst into tears, gripping my shirt with her other hand. I embraced her, allowing her to weep on my shoulder. Moments later, a nurse entered, checked her chart, and administered something into her IV. This will help her rest, she explained before leaving. Seeing Nikki drift off to sleep, I gently adjusted her head on the pillow. Thank you for coming, Kirsten expressed. You're welcome, I replied, nodding. How long will you stay? I'll stay until the end, she murmured. I've arranged to work remotely. There won't be a memorial service. It's what she wanted. What happened to Ramon? I inquired. Kirsten retrieved a folded newspaper clipping from her purse. After he threw her out, he replaced her with another girl, she recounted. Her husband didn't take it well and ended up eliminating him brutally. I skimmed through the article. It says disfigured, I noted to Kirsten. Yes, she confirmed. Wow, I murmured. And they're certain her husband was responsible? I inquired. Yes, she affirmed. Witnesses saw him leaving the warehouse. He was acquitted by reason of temporary insanity, she explained. I can see why, I remarked. I felt the same urge myself. I'm sorry, Ned, she expressed, for everything. Yes, I responded softly. In any case, we both felt a sense of remorse after watching that video you gave me, she continued. I never truly considered extramarital affairs until I saw it. Prior to that, it was merely about my own gratification. But after viewing it, my perspective changed. I never comprehended the depth of pain from betrayal or its high cost, she added, casting a glance at Nikki. Thanks to you, I'm not the same woman I was a decade ago. I'm pleased to hear that, Kirsten, I acknowledged. Take care of yourself, Ned, she said, embracing me. And look after my ex-brother-in-law, she addressed Brenda, hugging her. You can count on it, Brenda assured her, returning the hug. We exited and made our way back to the car. Are you all right? Brenda inquired as we fastened our seatbelts. Yes, I'm fine, I assured her, starting the car. Karma, this could become quite unbearable, I contemplated as I drove home.
Elora has been living what feels like a dream lately, spending delightful times with her son's friend. It's almost as if she's experiencing a second youth. Despite being in her early 40s with a son of her own, she was unaware during their courtship. but it turned out her husband was a truly despicable man. He took pride in coming from a wealthy lineage and believed that money could solve any of his mistakes. Elora met her husband when she was just 20, and she quickly married him after becoming pregnant at a young age. The introduction came about because her close friend, who worked at her husband's company, always carried Elora's photo in her wallet. Her husband saw Elora's picture by chance and insisted on being introduced, claiming he had never seen such a beautiful girl before. Despite his wealth and successful business, her husband was unfaithful, often coming home late and carelessly, leaving receipts for expensive gifts on the dresser. Unable to tolerate his behavior, Elora divorced him after their son went off to college last year. Elora is quite beautiful in stark contrast to her husband, who looked nothing short of a petty thief. Their son, who closely resembles his father, is tall and well-built. Despite her husband's misdeeds, Elora dedicated her life to her son, who was deeply cherished by his father as well. The divorce left Elora with a sizable alimony, as her husband's infidelity was blatant, and he met all her demands, even though their son is now an adult. He has already inherited a house for his future marriage. Elora felt relieved without her troublesome husband. She and her son could live comfortably. Whenever her son misses his father, they can meet separately. Each meeting ends with her son bringing home a significant amount of money from his father. Friends have suggested that Elora, still young and beautiful, is now free to live her life, even offering to introduce her to new men. However, Elora is not yet ready for that step. Elora returns home in the morning after her yoga session, a routine she's been following for 5 years. Although her friends suggested going out for lunch, Elora had planned to organize her pantry and chose to head home early. After finishing her chores, she lay down on her bed, without having lunch, feeling somewhat lethargic. Hours might have passed when suddenly, ding dong, her son Thane, a sophomore in college, entered the house with a friend. Elora was taken aback the moment she saw Thane's friend. He was tall, with sharp features and a distinct handsomeness. "Mom, this is my classmate Corin," Thane introduced. Corin greeted her politely. "Hello?" Elora, with a bright voice, welcomed him. "You're very handsome. I'm glad to meet you. Stay and play as much as you want. I'll make you some food." Corin's hearty laughter and comment, "Thane, you look just like your dad," made Elora's face turn red. Even after the boys retreated to the room, Elora felt a bit dazed. Although she was financially stable, her marriage had been filled with wounds from a husband who had passed on his genes to their son. Elora, who had once modeled from her high school days, his mother had died earlier this year. He mentioned living close to school, and when asked about his apartment's condition regarding water supply and temperature control, he brightly smiled and said, "Yes, it's nice because it faces south." Although Corin smiled, Elora started to worry about him. Back at home, the three prepared roast beef, clam chowder, and a salad, enjoying wine which lifted the spirits. Elora shared that she met her husband in her freshman year of college and got pregnant, which prevented her from returning to school. Her son mentioned, "Mom, Corin is the most handsome guy in our department and is extremely popular. Do you know how nice the girls are to him? He got the most flowers on Adults Day, haha." "Corin, do you have a girlfriend?" asked Elora, to which he replied, "Not yet. It's only been 3 months since my mom passed away, and I still miss her a lot. I can't really focus on anything." Elora thought she needed to take more care of Corin. It must be really hard. "I've heard losing parents is something you never get over. Hang in there, Corin," she said, looking at him. Corin forced a smile and continued eating. Thane asked if it would be okay to have Corin over more often, and Elora laughed, saying, "Of course, why even ask? Though Corin was offered to stay the night, he mentioned he had things to do at home and left. Thane shared more about Corin with Elora, who was already curious about him. She learned that Corin was renting a studio near school and working part-time jobs during his free hours to pay the rent. After his father's death, there had been debts, which were paid off by selling the house after his mother passed away, leaving him with about $10,000. This money went to his studio's security deposit and rent. He had considered taking a risky job that paid well a month ago, but was advised against it. Hearing this made Elora worry even more. Elora's house had 2 floors and 5 rooms. She wanted to offer one of the guest rooms to Corin and asked her son if that would be okay. Her son said, "Do whatever you think is best, Mom. I'll talk to him." Despite looking almost like a celebrity, Corin is really genuine. Throughout their marriage, Elora never had a night free from arguments about her husband's infidelities. She was constantly worried that Thane would find out, though he eventually did. Back in middle school, Thane had asked, "Why do you stay with a man like Dad? It's clearly hard on you," to which she replied, "If you ask me to divorce him once you're grown, I'll do it immediately." She didn't want to burden her son with the scars of divorce while he was focused on his studies, clinging to a slim hope that preserving their family might somehow make a difference. Unfortunately, her husband failed to meet those expectations, often coming home late under the guise of business, reeking of another woman's perfume. When Thane was accepted into a prestigious university, his father boasted, "Lucky you took after my brains. Congratulations," offering a significant sum of money. Thane then urged his mother, "Mom, it's time to leave Dad. I'm scared of ending up like him, but I'm grateful for the opportunities his support provided for my education." Subsequently, her husband handed over a considerable portion of his wealth to Elora in the divorce. Looking back, Elora regrets not acting sooner. Despite the outward glamour of their home, Corin decided to move into Elora's home, agreeing to contribute by paying rent through part-time work. Corin had been captivated by Elora's beauty since the first visit and found himself developing feelings beyond those of a friend's mother. The thought of leaning on Elora for support became appealing, especially after sharing the loss of his own parents. He longed to stay with Elora if possible. However, when Thane suggested Corin move in, he initially hesitated, fearing it might inconvenience Elora, but eventually agreed after persistent persuasion. Despite having lost touch with his own relatives and living a busy life, Corin found comfort in the warm meals and the sense of family Elora provided. Living with Elora became a new norm for Corin, who had a background in piano and had accompanied a choir in high school. One day, while playing the grand piano at Thane's home, Elora expressed a desire to learn, prompting Corin to start teaching her. "Corin, I should pay you for lessons at the going rate," Elora said, to which Corin replied with a laugh, "Then, I'll have to check what that is." On the day, Thane went on a trip with middle school friends. Elora suggested they go on a trip too. Corin asked for some time in the evening to talk. Elora was anxious all day, wondering what Corin wanted to discuss. That evening, Corin arrived with a cake, Elora's favorite steak, and a ricotta cheese salad, saying, "It's your birthday. Why didn't you tell me?" It seems my son had forgotten his birthday and was planning to let it quietly pass. But it looks like he saw the note I left on the calendar. We ended up making dinner together. "Make a wish before the candles go out," he said with a laugh, and Elora replied, "My wish is to live happily with my boys." Corin said, "Thank you for always being so kind to me. I want to be your man today." Elora was happy they were on the same wavelength but couldn't show it. They spent a great day in Elora's bedroom. Corin was skinny but very healthy. In fact, he said it was his first time. Elora matched his pace while stroking his hair. I can't remember the last time I had a moment like this. It's been so long I've forgotten. My husband openly cheated on me after Thane was born, she said. Corin replied, I'll soothe your loneliness. Look forward to it. And Elora shared a room with Corin until her son returned from his trip. When Thane was away, they lived almost like a couple. It feels like a dream to have such a relationship with my son's friend. I know I can't be with Corin forever. But for now, I just want to focus on the present.